right, good evening. This is the Great Barrington Planning Board meeting for Thursday, March 9th. We are here in Town Hall and pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend the meeting in person, and those who wish to do so may attend remotely by following the instructions on the meeting agenda. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In addition, pursuant to MGL 7C 30A Section 20F, after notifying the chair of a public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. Listings of the agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. The listing which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. And lastly, per section 241-1 of the town code, except for procedural and housekeeping matters, town residents shall have the right to address the board on any item that requires a vote at a time before a board votes on that item. Such residents will be allowed as much time as the proponents of an item are permitted to have. So this meeting is being recorded, and we'll start out with roll call attendance. Jonathan Henkin.
I am here.
Pedro Pachano.
Present.
Jackie Kane.
Here.
Malcolm Fick.
Here.
Brandy Nelson is here. And Jeremy Ega is absent today. All right. Do we have any last minute Form A's, Mr. Rumpel?
We do not.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then. The minutes of February 23rd, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Malcolm. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. I guess all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
It's
I've
unanimous.
been like 3 years. So it's awkward.
It's unanimous.
Okay, unanimous. Excellent. All right, so then we'll get into the meat of tonight's meeting, which are public hearings on zoning bylaw amendments. So we'll have a public hearing pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A Section 5 for the public comment on proposed zoning changes to the town zoning bylaw and map. Proposals have been available for view at the town clerk's office and online on the planning board page of the town website, at the 2 town libraries, and also may be requested from the planning department. So we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Pedro, and seconded by Jonathan. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Unanimous. So second item is presentation explanation of the proposed amendments. And so, Chris, do you recommend we do these one at a time, or do you recommend we introduce them all and then go back and take comment on each?
I'll do a quick overview of all of them,
Okay.
and then we can maybe discuss each of them in turn.
Okay.
I'll read just briefly the public hearing notice.
Okay.
As Brandy introduced, this is a public hearing pursuant to General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5. To consider the following proposed changes to the zoning bylaw and map. Amending Section 11, definitions related to family and dwelling units. Amending Section 6.4, performance standards, including adding subsections for site design and lighting standards. Amending Section 3.1.4, table of use regulations to permit 3-unit residential development by right. Amending regulations in sections 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 governing 2, 3, and accessory and multi-unit dwellings. Amending section 6.2.7 regarding trees on Route 7. Amending section 3.1.4 table of use regulations to allow multi-unit residential and mixed-use development by right in the B2 zone, and to require that such development include affordable housing. Amend the zoning map on Silver Street, change the zoning of certain parcels from R2 to R1A. And by petition, amending section 9.3.16.5 of the wireless telecommunications overlay district. So this was properly posted, advertised in the newspaper, sent to DHCD and DRPC. And as you said, it was available online in the libraries, etc. So I would, if you'll indulge me, just give a quick overview, unless Brandy, you want to take things out of order.
No, I think an overview is good. I mean, some of these I would consider more like housekeeping type items, and I'm, of course, we'll want to hear what the public has to say, but those may move rather quickly.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so everybody should be able to see the shared screen. Just in general, the zoning amendment process with the planning board usually starts in the summertime as the planning board starts to discuss its own proposals for the next year's town meeting. But zoning amendments can be initiated by any of the following: the planning board, the select board, by landowners, and by citizens. And then to be adopted, proposals require a 2/3 vote of town meeting and approval of the Attorney General. And prior to town meeting, all zoning proposals must be reviewed by the planning board in a public hearing like this. And the planning board must make a report on those proposals to the town meeting. So we'll just jump into the items in the order which I read in the public hearing notice. The first article the planning board proposes is to revise the definitions to remove the term family from the residential definitions. The term family is becoming a little bit more, well, let's say, outdated and inapplicable recently. The proposal will change the term dwelling single family to dwelling single unit, for example, or dwelling 2-unit or 3-unit. Because the term family means people in that group are related, the term excludes the wide variety of household living arrangements that exist among people who are not related. There was not a recent article, there was an article about a group of nuns who wanted to cohabitate together, and they were excluded from doing so because they weren't, quote, a family. Interesting. They were all
Even though
retired.
they're all sisters.
They were all retired.
Bad.
But you can imagine there, households are changing, people who may choose to live together for a variety of reasons. The term family could be used to exclude certain individuals. So this shift will ensure that the bylaw doesn't exclude non-nuclear families, unmarried couples, group homes, and people who choose to live together in group housekeeping arrangements like co-housing or co-living arrangements.
Also pets.
Yeah, pets. Some examples of the proposed changes, and these are in the these are available, as I mentioned. This just shows you where family is being replaced by unit, for example. And we can dig into that more if you like. The second item is to insert new subsections into section 6.4 performance standards. Performance standards apply to all development throughout town, no matter the district, no matter the type of development. In this case, the planning board proposes to insert regulations regarding exterior lighting and how sites are designed. These written standards will provide transparency, making permanent approvals clearer and more standardized, of course. Some examples of the site design regulations to be included. Slopes shall not be altered more than 6 feet. Circulation on the site must provide for safety for pedestrians and drivers and reduce headlight glare to abutting properties. Safe pedestrian access must be provided. Drainage designs must be included if they're needed. and parking areas must be screened from view. And finally, something the board talks about all the time, also on an ad hoc basis, or a site by site or permit by permit basis, are exterior lighting controls. This will insert that language into the bylaw directly. Exterior lighting will have to have full horizontal cutoffs, so it doesn't glare into the night sky. Any exterior LED lights will have to be color temperature of 3000 Kelvin or less, making a warmer color temperature than the full blue lights. And no lights can be at full power overnight between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m.
You don't have uplighting in there.
Full horizontal cutoffs.
Yeah, but
Maybe I simplified too much for the slide. You
yeah,
can check the language.
yeah.
The third item is permitting for 3-unit residential uses. This proposal will allow by right 3-unit structures in all zones. Currently, they are allowed by special permit in residential zones and by right in business zones only. The zoning bylaw does already allow 3 units on a property by right. This is, of course, assuming that the property is conforming, that those units can meet the applicable side, front, and rear yard setbacks, etc. The bylaw already allows for this, but only if one of those 3 is an accessory dwelling. The smaller is not more than 900 square feet in size. So this isn't really changing the overall number of units to be allowed. It's just saying that one of them doesn't necessarily have to be an accessory dwelling. Item 4 is changing some of the regulations in 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 regarding 2-unit, 3-unit, and multi-unit residential uses. It will remove the site plan review requirement for accessory dwelling units and for 2- and 3-unit developments. Instead, as we discussed, design and performance standards will be inserted into the bylaw governing how these sites are developed. And this also has a control that says if there are 3 units on the site, you cannot also add an accessory dwelling. So it's not as if there will be 4 permitted by right on a site. The 5th item is regarding the tree requirement on Route 7. Certain areas of Route 7, when a new building is built or a proposal comes before this board for site plan review, that applicant is required to plant a tree for every 25 feet of frontage that they have on Route 7. For many years, that requirement was 1 tree per 50 feet of frontage. It was changed in 2019 from 50 feet to 25 feet. There wasn't really much discussion about that. It was an amendment on town meeting floor. Sounded good at the time, but in practice, this board has seen that it often just cannot work. It just doesn't function, particularly for small sites. Maybe for larger sites that have plenty of frontage, 1 tree per 25 feet is doable. So this proposes to switch it back to the old 50 feet, 1 tree per 50 feet of frontage in these areas of Stockton Road. The 6th item is amending the B2 zone regulations, the table of use regulations in the B2 zone. So it would allow multi-unit development by right in these areas. The B2 zone includes parts of Stockbridge Road, parts of downtown Main Street, and parts of Main Street south of downtown and south of Silver Street. It would allow that multi-unit development by right, whether in a purely residential building or in a mixed-use development, but it also requires affordable housing to be included. So from the development side, we've heard many times that there is a lot of risk on developers to building multi-unit developments and adding housing units to the town because the special permit process is uncertain. The decision is uncertain, could be litigated, it can take quite a bit of time and money. On the other hand, the town does want to consider, promote housing opportunities, particularly where development is, can be sited, let's say smartly, where there are utilities, where the roads can handle the traffic that these might generate. And so the B2 zone is a good candidate for multi-unit development. The town, but the planning board also, in exchange for allowing the development by right, will require that 10% of the units be affordable to households earning not more than 100% of the area median. Of course, the development would also have to meet all of the standards and requirements of the bylaw: parking, landscaping, setbacks, lot coverage, height, etc.
So this is, it started out as incentivizing zoning, building, but now it's inclusionary zoning.
You could call it inclusionary zoning. It's incentivizing in that the development would be by right. It takes away the risk and uncertainty of a special permit process. But it does require that 10% of the units be affordable.
So if they didn't want to provide that as special permit, an option,
Yeah,
so it's definitely inclusionary zoning.
it is.
What, can you say that again? What was your question?
It's definitely inclusionary zoning.
That's not a question. What was the question?
Does it,
Is there a
can you
special
override it
permit?
with a special permit?
Can you override it with a special permit?
Then,
Why would you do that? I mean,
if you didn't want to apply affordable housing,
They didn't
well,
want
if you didn't want the affordable housing, you just apply for the project with a special permit.
No, he's saying you can't.
You can.
no, I'm saying,
Well,
This says you
that was
can't.
my question.
That was the question. The bylaw doesn't currently contemplate that. But we can maybe hold that and discuss it more when we get into it.
Yes, let's proceed with the rest of the presentation.
Finally, from the planning board's perspective, is a proposed rezoning of several lots on the south side of Silver Street, immediately west of the railroad tracks. Some people know it as the Moulthrop or the Haddad lots, if that helps. Specifically, it's parcels 6, 7A, and 7C of Assessor's Map 24. The area on the screen that's highlighted with the bold black line that shows the 3 lots that are the subject of this proposal. It totals about 6 acres. Just if anybody's curious, there's about 600 feet of frontage on Silver Street. In the R2 zone, which is the current zoning, that requires 150 feet of frontage for every single lot. And because this has water and sewer, the lots don't have to be 1 acre in size, they can be a ½ acre in size. And the proposal is to change it to the R1A. So I'll give you a couple of illustrations here. This shows the an aerial photo with the existing zoning overlaid. It's a little bit transparent, but where my cursor is here, south of Silver Street and west of the railroad tracks, is a kind of a pale yellow. This is the existing R2 zone. This red square here on Silver Street near the nursing home represents a conforming lot in the R2 zone. It's got 150 feet of frontage and it's a ½ acre in size. Just north of Silver Street, kind of the corner of Maple Ave and Silver Street, this is a yellow color. This is the existing R1A zone. Incidentally, this triangle between the railroad tracks, Maple Avenue and Silver Street is also about 6 acres. So it's about the same size on both sides of the street. And highlighted in blue here is a conforming R1A lot. To the east of the tracks, this is the MXD zone with the apartments and Ward's Nursery. And then to the east of the tracks, south of Silver Street is the beginning of the B2 zone in the cemetery area. Proceeding south to Big Y, etc. So just keeping in mind those conforming lots, this is the existing zoning. If a person were to split the lot into conforming lots with 150 feet of frontage each. And of course, that would leave the rest of the lot, including the green house that's currently there. Just for illustrative purposes. And if you take that conforming lot in the R1A zone, that blue square, this is what it would look like. You could get at least 4 lots maybe 5, maybe 6. But the 5th and 6th lots would be over here where it's really steep slope. And I just want to note that a good bit of this property is most likely unbuildable because of steep slopes and because of wetland protection permitting around these ponds, which are classified as wetlands. So once you get outside of the 100 feet buffer area of these 2 ponds, really the only place you could develop is down in the extreme southwest corner of that lower field. There's not a great deal of development potential there, but this would allow additional lots. The use regulations between the R2 and the R1A are very, very similar in terms of the types of uses allowed, residential, not business, not commercial. And the setbacks are pretty similar, except in the R1A, I think it's a 25-foot front setback, and in the R2, it's a 50-foot front setback. So this is slightly smaller lots, slightly more of them, possibly with the homes closer to the street than the R2 would currently allow. And in fact, it would make this area on the south side of Silver Street very similar to what's already existing in that 6-acre triangle I described earlier between the railroad tracks, Silver Street, and Maple. So that is a quick summary of the board's proposals. Randy, how would you like to proceed? Would you like to discuss the board's proposals, or would you like to hear a summary of the citizen petition?
I think we want to hear all of them. So summary of the citizens petition. Is there someone present? Either online or here in the room for the citizens petition?
I don't see Krisha on there.
I see a hand raised. David,
David Unger, maybe.
David, you should be able to unmute. We're asking for comments about the citizen petition.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We're
Okay.
asking for comments about the citizens petition.
Yes, I'm the Silver Street situation. I'm
No.
across the
No.
street from that.
No, we're not.
Yeah,
we'll
Mr.
come back to
Unger,
that.
we'll come back to you in a minute. We thought maybe you wanted to present information regarding the citizen zoning petition.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's very hard to hear you guys. Okay, fine,
No,
sorry.
no problem. Thank you. We'll come back to you, I promise.
Sure.
Okay, so if no one is present, should we just review the text that was proposed?
Sure.
Or do you want to do that now, or do you want to do that at the end? As we
I
go
wanted
into
to just
detail
get them,
all the zoning. Allowance.
well, that's, I mean,
Maybe someone will show up to.
yeah. I
Mhm.
actually, did we get text?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's
language is in
It's
the
in the
petition.
petition. I'm gonna read that.
Yes, please, because I'm not seeing it.
The citizens petition to see if the town will vote to add under the general legislation zoning section 93.16.5 wireless telecommunication overlay district to adopt a wireless telecommunication facilities application requirement for completeness. WTF, which is wireless telecommunication facility applications, will be considered incomplete until the FCC completes the DC Circuit court mandated environmental review of the entire 800,000 to 1 million WTF rollout to the condition as stated in the NEPA Policy Act of 1969, including studies from scientists independent from industry who have fully investigated millimeter wave 5G small cell technology safety. And that the FCC regulations have been updated to include measures that comply with the results of this review, and that the town of Great Barrington shall consider reasonable alternatives such as fiber optic.
Okay. And then in addition, we received a packet of materials, which looked maybe like a presentation. that Someone
It
intended
had
to make.
examples and it had some articles in it.
Yeah, okay. Okay, all right. Well, that's what we've got to go with then. All right, thank you. Sorry, my page is blurry.
So you go.
Yep, so now we'll open it up for questions from the public. I'd kind of like to take them one at a time, if that's all right. Questions from the public on the first one, so that it's a little organized.
You
Does
bet.
that work? Okay.
Reasonable.
You're the chair.
That's why I have the gavel today, excellent. Okay, so, we'll take each of these proposed amendments one at a time, asking for, public questions or comments, as they are listed in the agenda. And so the first one is amending section 11 definitions that include the term family and replacing it with, I guess dwelling units, yes, to be more inclusive. So, is there anyone, here in the room or in, online land that, would like to make a comment on petition item number 1 or proposed amendment number 1 regarding the definition? Okay, seeing no comments, we will move on to item number 2, which is amending section 6.4 performance standards to include site design and lighting standards to help guide development efforts. And if anyone would like Chris to go back to those particular items, we can certainly do that as well. Any comments on adding design standards and lighting standards?
If this is adopted, does that eliminate site plan review anywhere?
No. This proposal is just to insert these subsections.
So if
It doesn't have to do with eliminating site plan review requirements other places in the bylaw. We do deal with that in some of the other proposals tonight, but not with this proposal in particular.
Okay, this one would just inform applicants for site plan review, these are the issues. Well,
But
the site plan review or any
development, whether it's by right with site plan review, or whether it requires a special permit, these standards apply.
And I'm happy to try and codify some lighting standards too, because for many years we have had that ad hoc approach, and I think it's more fair and consistent, that people know what is expected
Mhm.
and that we have the standards set.
Can I ask about process here, or, I have a comment on this.
6.4,
Yeah,
okay.
The 6.4.5, I think the first sentence is kind of ambiguous. It says all site development, and then the end of the sentence says for any 2 or 3 unit development. I think that relates to staff level review, but it's not clear to me.
Is your
Right here.
statement that it should be revised to
To
have a
make it
period at the
clarify.
end of objective,
Right.
and then 2 and 3 unit development shall be reviewed, or
Yes.
all development shall be reviewed?
Well,
Yeah.
I interpret this to be all development has to conform to the design standards.
I think
but
yes.
2 or 3 unit developments will have staff review.
And what do you think about that, Chris?
Is that correct?
So here's the way it's written, or proposed, all site development shall meet the following objectives. And shall be reviewed at staff level for compliance for any 2 unit or 3 unit development. I think you're right, Malcolm, that would imply 2 unit and 3 unit development is reviewed at staff level, but in point of fact, all development is reviewed at staff level.
So why don't we just
So we could
eliminate that
strike,
clause for any 2 or 3 unit development?
Yeah, I think that would.
I mean, are we gonna debate this now, or are we taking public comment?
we're taking comments.
Public comments, or?
Yeah, but there were no public comments, and then Malcolm had a comment, so
I
would you?
just wanted to, we usually, take public comment, and then we'll have second round where we discuss this stuff, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, the agenda is ambiguous, says comments and questions from the public, comments and questions from the board, and then later on, after we close the public meeting, then discussion. So I'm not sure what the comments and
I think,
from the board should.
I think we can go each one, take comments from the public, comments from the board. We can have discussion after we close the public hearing. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
Okay, just to clarify first.
Yeah,
Okay, so seeing no, and if anyone in the public, please raise your hand. Jackie.
are we talking about lighting now or moving on from lighting?
If you have a comment about lighting or anything pertaining to, proposed Article 2 amending section 6.4, please make your comment.
Okay, well, what I'm looking, 6.4, oh, lighting.
Yep.
Okay, so what I was wondering about is the height for light fixtures.
That's a good point.
That is a good point.
Oh,
It
good.
may vary based on where the light is being used, right?
But I know that's come up in a number of reviews that we've done.
We do have, is it 20 feet or 25 feet already?
Well, we tried to get 15 feet.
I don't have the code up in front of me because I have not enough.
What is the
Tabs.
idea?
Trying to think what section that's in. Is that already in performance?
High impact commercial development.
Yes, that's the one. Thank you, Chris. Does this says 20 or 25?
That's a
I
special.
feel like
permit.
we ran across this with,
By definition,
the Kmart Plaza when they did their. So the question would be, do we want to add some sort of height restriction depending on the type of use?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that's a good suggestion.
And
Yeah.
another question is, do we ever use the term dark sky rules or dark skies anywhere?
Compliant.
We say
Not
that,
in the-
We
not in the-
don't,
we use a synonym or variation on the same thing in this.
yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. So that's an industry standard, dark sky compliant. And I personally like that idea of adding dark sky compliant fixtures, but they can be hard to find in some instances. I don't know.
Are they
Pedro,
clear enough to people? What that means?
It's a certification on your cut sheet for your light, so it's easy enough to find that. Other communities that I work with do have that in their requirement. Full cutoff should cover that without requiring the dark sky compliant seal. Dark sky compliant, in my opinion, would probably be a little bit more conservative and protective of night sky. So I don't know if anyone else has an opinion. I'm sort of mixed on it.
Yes.
I say yeah.
I came here from Tucson and Arizona. I mean, dark sky rules are really important, especially when it comes to astronomy.
Mhm,
And so that's pretty heavily enforced, except in certain instances
mhm.
where they get.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that's a good comment.
I don't think we can introduce that term now without
Yeah, we can.
defining what it is, right?
Oh, well, you have to define it.
It-
Yeah.
I mean, we could open up a whole new.
I would need to check. I think it might be a trademark.
Mm.
It's like almost like a branding.
I have a question, I guess, I live near the Big Y Plaza.
Could you-
and- Well, Amanda Hanlon Hockler, 193 Maple Avenue, Great Barrington.
Nice.
I live near the Big Y, and at night, the bright lights in the parking lot shine into our bedrooms. Are they not supposed to do that, or is the property grandfather?
I think in that instance, it does probably only comply to the high intensity commercial.
I don't know the specifics of that site. I know there was a special permit that allowed that development, and it may have talked about the lights there, but.
If all of the businesses there close, is it possible for them to lower the power or turn the lights down significantly at night so they're not shining into the bedrooms at night?
There is a,
The bylaw
an
requires-
existing performance standard that deals with glare. So I think
In
we,
fairness, I haven't reached out to them to say, your lights shine into my bedroom window at night, and I
Yeah.
could, and maybe they'd just be willing to turn it down, I just don't know
or shield them.
if there's anything
Chris,
Yeah,
is
I
that-
you know about it.
They're not supposed to, it's not supposed to be exceed 1 foot candle off the property.
Right, so there may be existing standards for that particular site that could be looked at, but in general, this proposal would forestall that
That's-
glare out
For new development.
for new development. And it would require
a special
them to
permit
be
for the
powered down to a lower level at night. But as an existing development, we'd have to look at that in particular,
Is that project considered a high impact project?
most likely.
Because they have a requirement in here.
I think it depends on, again, like Chris said, when it was constructed and when it was permitted.
Well, not that long ago. Because they came back for an expansion.
It's a great question, and it's a good example of what we're talking about. I can't answer the specifics of that site, though.
There's a fair distance between where I live and where the big Y is.
Yeah.
You can see a big, almost like a flashlight. If I took a picture on the bed behind us of the light shining all the way from the plaza, that's. You know, my property's 5 acres and you have River Hill Farm in between and then the backside of the big Y. So it's pretty bright. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
applaud you for doing it because there's a lot of research that shows that all of this unnatural light messes with natural hormone sleep.
Yeah, no, that's true. Thank
Not to
you.
mention the rest of the living beings that we share a world with.
Right. No, that's definitely true. All right. Any other comments from board members on this item? I don't see any more hands on from the public, so we'll move on to item 3. So, number 3, are there any, let's take public comments first, amending section 3.1.4, table of uses to permit 3-unit residential by right. Do we have any comments or questions from, members joining us virtually? Please raise your hand. Do we have any comments or questions from our 2 members here in the room?
What was that section?
That is section 3.1.4, which is the table of uses. It says what your zone is and what uses are permitted, allowing 3-unit residential development by right. Okay, are there any board comments on this item? Comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, Julie Manager, 15 Sumner Street. What was the, prior to the proposed amendment, 3-unit by right, what was it originally? On the existing,
Yeah, let's see, so we had site plan review for 3-unit.
No, we had a special permit.
Special permit.
Currently, single unit and 2-unit is allowed by right on a conforming lot in a residential zone. And if you have a room, you can even do an accessory dwelling unit. This would allow 3 units by right rather than by special permit in some zones. But no accessory dwelling unit on, in addition to those 3. So 3,
but still conforming to setbacks and all.
still have
Yes,
everything. still
everything
has
has to
conform to setbacks. Height, percentage of the lot that can be covered by buildings. Yeah.
Okay.
And the new performance standards, if they pass.
And the new performance standards, that's true.
Yeah, this is why these articles are always tricky because it always seems like the intention is to increase density, but it's not increasing density in the sense that the lots can't be developed any more than they already can be developed.
You mean in terms of like, the building covering, the amount of building space covering
Exactly.
the lot?
Mhm.
So if you-
Someone can come in and put 25 apartments in the space. This would just allow you to skip the special permit if someone wanted to put 3 units in.
Right. Yeah. Without a special permit, they'd still have other design standard requirements to meet and the underlying zoning requirements for the setback.
So why do we not allow this in the R4? We don't allow, not even by special permit, we don't allow. Now, if this passes, it would not allow 4 to 8 units in the R4, which are the biggest lots we have.
Well, the intention obviously is to preserve open space.
That doesn't make any sense. You still have the
That's the
same,
intention, that's the zoning intention.
Right, yeah, to have the density be where the higher density zones are, right?
I understand,
Yeah.
but to say that you cannot do it. For the whole zone, that's a little.
It's a good question. We can come back and discuss that.
I submit to the board that talking about the allowances for 4 to 8 units or more might be outside of the scope of the hearing.
Well, we're modifying that line.
Yeah, we're not, anyway.
We could discuss it, but I do it with a caveat that it might be outside the scope and not permitted.
Well, John's just talking about 3 units in the R4.
No, he's talking about 4 or more.
3 units in the R4 are now gonna be allowed. He's talking about the 4 or more, the 9 or more.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. I think
3
you,
units in the R4.
I support Chris, yeah.
3 units in the R4, where is it allowed?
It will be allowed with this.
Jonathan's
amendment.
question, yeah, here it's allowed in the R, right, right here.
So move here.
So.
R4,
So
Yes, yes,
And
and so it's 4 through 8. So Jonathan's question, I agree with Chris, is outside of our current scope because it's a different line.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree with that.
But Jonathan, it's not a bad thought. We'll put a pin in it.
Put it on the agenda for.
Put a pin in it for
summer,
June. For
for
June.
summer.
Okay, so then next item is, article number 4, amending the regulations in section 8.1 and 8.2 and 8.3 governing 2, 3 accessory and multi-unit dwellings. This seems a little.
So just, again, it removes the site plan review requirement for 2-unit, 3-unit and accessory dwelling unit proposals. Again, they'd still have to conform to all the performance standards and other regulations we've been talking about.
What if the site standards don't pass? And we remove the site plan review, then what?
Well, the board will have to think on its feet on the town meeting floor.
Well, and I'm thinking the same thing if the table of use amendment doesn't pass.
This board has had plenty of discussion and debate about the need to do both. If
Mhm,
there's not a site plan review in front of this board, then there should be clear standards.
mhm.
If the town meeting doesn't pass the clear standards, then we probably
Should hang on to the site plan review.
would park this one and pass over the.
If the town meeting doesn't pass the definitions, then we might as well.
We can amend it on the floor too.
Well,
You could
also-
amend it on the floor and
Yeah.
keep site plan review.
Yeah, but
And
why pull it back? Because then we wouldn't get the language changed.
Let's-
If there's no.
Yeah, good point,
Yeah.
Pedro. You could,
Just amend
you know,
it.
instead of deleting the site plan review requirement, you could just keep that in.
Yeah, okay.
So
You would still
we'll
deal with these on an ad hoc basis then.
we do need to have a strategy session once we get through this process, right? And I think that's a good discussion for it. Okay, so this is, how much, Chris, would you say that number 3 goes with number 4? I mean, it sort of aligns the text with the table of use, right?
It does.
Yeah.
It aligns the text with the table.
Okay, just in terms of trying to explain to the public what
Yeah.
the proposal is. So do we have any public comments on item number 4, which is a amendment to the text of the zoning bylaw to align it with the item number 3, permitting 3-unit residential development by right? Any questions? No? Board questions? Seeing no board questions, we'll go on to item number 5, which is amending section 6.2.7 regarding trees on Route 7. I think Chris's summary was a good one. I think we have practically seen several redevelopment applications primarily come before the board. And because of the existing conditions of the site frontage, there is simply not any room to accommodate the number of trees that are requested or required in the zoning, and we find ourselves in a position of waiving them or finding other ways to stack trees in little corners, and I don't know if that's really good for the trees overall. So that's the proposal there. Do we have any members online who have comments or questions about this proposal? This would go back to the 50 feet of frontage, which we had previously in the code. 1 tree per 50 feet of frontage.
And as I told this board, and for the benefit of people listening, 1 tree for every 25 feet is, if you're downtown on Main Street and you're thinking about the small ornamental trees that were planted on Main Street in the last few years, those small trees are about 25-foot intervals. So that's, you know, the amount of trees in that space, if you can visualize it. So I think the intent of the Route 7 landscaping is to create a large landscape treed corridor, and small ornamentals are wonderful, but don't really achieve that
It's
intent.
more pedestrian friendly than vehicle friendly.
Yeah, it doesn't bring the scale of the corridor down any significantly. It would be beautiful. 50 feet would certainly allow more room for larger trees, sycamores, big maples or elms.
This doesn't preclude anyone from planting more trees.
Correct. Right.
Right, just reduces the requirement. Okay,
So,
so we have public who may have interest in
Yeah,
commenting.
I'm Julie Anajar, 15 Sumner Street. I'm here on behalf of the tree committee as well. We just learned about this proposed change to the bylaw last night at our meeting. We just reorganized the tree committee, and we've been meeting regularly since November. And our mission, as probably everybody knows, is to replant, the canopy, especially on Route 7 and in all of these areas that really require these large shade trees around town. We've so far done a lot of work to identify many potential places in Great Barrington. And this is very much in opposition to our mission. We've worked really hard to try to come up with programming in the last few months to put out there prior to Arbor Day that would generate community engagement with our tree community, and kind of have more community support so that we can actually go forward with requesting some kind of a line item budget just for the planting of trees. Right now, the Department of Public Works has a budget for the removal of trees and for their maintenance. We have zero for planting. And we feel that if you change the language, it would just it's a message in direct opposition to our mission. And the fact that in about a couple of weeks, maybe less, we are going to be officially proclaimed a tree city by the Arbor Day Foundation, a national foundation. We're working on art installations related to Arbor Day around town that hopefully will be put up through April, and an Arbor Day celebration at the Mason Library, where we were going to, as a tree committee, provide information about trees, tree planting. We're going to give away free seedlings, courtesy of wards. And there's going to be other planning on the library side with books and activities. And this is just kind of to build momentum so that we actually recognize the community's trees as a very, very valuable asset, especially in the Berkshire, especially as a tourist destination. I think our canopy is what brings a lot of people in, whether they know it or not. And I think this is this is not the right time to consider something like this. And I would propose an alternative, whereas you would keep the language intact and maybe consult with the tree committee when it comes time for a business to plant. If the frontage is not available, there are other options, but it really depends on the size. I mean, and the reality is that a lot of these permit plans, there's no follow through with the tree planting, and that's a problem. And one of the most glaring lack of trees is on Route 7. And a lot of that, the sidewalk space is owned by DOT or controlled by Department of Transportation. And so the merchants or the businesses are like one of our only allies to kind of like start the process of replanting that canopy. We don't have to, 50 feet is really far. I paced it out. 25 feet is already quite a distance between trees. For shade trees, it's ideal. For the large shade trees at scale that would be required to make a really nice, convincing canopy for Route 7. So I would say, please remove this if you could, and consider an alternative of keeping the language and actually asking in the permits that these businesses maintain their trees. So if a tree dies, they must replace it, so that there's an incentive to maintain these trees. If we go with a 50-foot spacing, there's a very good chance that one tree would be planted on average for these lots. I don't know really what the average size frontage is, but there's a good chance that one tree would be planted, that tree would die, and there would be no tree there. And that business would continue for who knows how many years. And so there's the greater chance that at least one tree would survive on a plot that would, with 25-foot spacing. There was the chance that at least one would survive, and with a maintenance plan, maybe all of them, if there's a requirement that trees be replanted. That is really one of the only ways that we can envision this coming to fruition. We are trying to get a budget with DPW, and it's really going to depend on community support for our trees, engagement, and not hearing that we are going to actually, that the committees and boards are in opposition to each other. I think we have to really work together. I think it's important that tree committee be a part of the conversation every time there's tree involvement, or the potential that trees could be involved, because we have so many old trees and we have so many beautiful trees that, sometimes because they're all around us, we don't notice them until they're gone. And I promise we have 0 planting budget. Right now, we're trying to find ways for people to donate trees through memorial tree program, where, a tree would be donated for a birth announcement, or the memorialization of a death, and other means. I think that was pretty much what I have to say about it, but it's really important because right now we're like right in the middle of working towards this campaign, this information campaign, and it would really be great.
I hear what you're saying. So I would like to speak for the board that this is a very tree supportive committee. We've run into these practical issues. And so I want to ask, which is why we're back looking at this as far as 50 feet instead of 25 feet, because the reality is that the frontages are limited, and sometimes there's not even 50 feet of frontage available for planting anything. It's just all asphalt, and not that that's what we want to see, but we're not in a position to be able to change that. So I want to just ask Chris a question, because we want to be able to collaborate with you, but if we were to leave it at 25 feet and the applicant was not able to meet that requirement, can we do a contribution in lieu of planting to a tree planting fund that then could help create some funds for the committee to do some plantings elsewhere? Is that permissible?
Would have to be approved.
It would, I'm just saying, is it a legal mechanism that we could potentially?
I suppose so, inclusionary trees.
I know.
That's a great strategy.
But let me just say that, I like what you're saying, but this only applies to the frontage, the front yard of those lots. And on the planning board, we've tried to get the parking out of the front yards. We've tried to bring the buildings closer to the street. We're reducing that setback over and over and over to try and make more of a street wall of buildings. And so, if the building setback, what we say, 20 or 25 feet is one of the things we talked about. Is that really enough room to plant a tree? Did you want to plant a tree within, 12 feet of your building? I wouldn't.
Well, on Main Street we do. And I think when you walk.
But those are small trees.
Yes, but there was a large shade canopy, and right now it is the opinion of the tree committee and other people around the community that these trees are not to scale. These are decorative trees for backyards and residential properties.
They're not
This
elms.
is not at scale. It's not an elm. It's not
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
a Bradford pep. It's not at scale. And so there's a very disjointed kind of experience there, where you're going through this massive, very wide downtown lane, and there are crab apples or shads which are more wetland trees, and they're tiny. They're more bushes, and some of them have not survived, and they have been replanted with more substantial. There are a couple of oaks that have thankfully been, put in. But definitely, you can have these large trees within 12 feet of a building, for sure. And I think people embrace that. Right now, there's new sidewalk that was installed along Stockbridge Road, and it is a scorching area. It is a desert, If we can have in some of these neighborhoods, close, very narrow streets and these large shade trees, overhanging houses, it's very beautiful, it's very comfortable, it's very human, and immediately people are drawn to these places. There's an advantage for the town. It makes us look great to the Arbor Day Foundation and to tree lovers everywhere, and there are many in this town. And the experience is completely different. You go into any other town, I'm so sorry. But if you go anywhere, people flock to shade, especially in the summertime, especially now that spring has become summer. I think it's very important. It's very important for oxygen. There are so many benefits to the insects, to the birds. And I think that is why the tree committee also exists. I mean, this is a committee that was voted for by the town to exist so that we can protect our assets and to improve what has already been taken away. Or restored.
I think, we're not gonna debate, but
Okay,
if you have a comment,
Well, I just-
and then I wanna go to Eileen.
okay, I just wanted to point out that, a lot of those streets that like Grove Street or, East Street or any of this, a lot of those plantings are in the right of way. They're not necessarily in, if you can plant them in the right of way, if there's room in the right of way to plant them, that's what gives you the street wall of trees, and that's fabulous. But
That's why we need a town budget for the trees.
But there's room, on Main Street, there is room, the sidewalk is not that wide, and there were shade trees, and it was beautiful, and people. Before I even moved here, I read up the controversy about all of these trees coming down, because it really changes the aspect.
they were dying.
Yes,
Well-
they may have been dying, but the fact their removal changed the aspect of this town. And
Oh, for sure.
I know that there was a lot of controversy, and I don't think it's a big ask for these businesses to put up a tree and to maintain it. I don't think it's an onerous financial expenditure. And there's no harm in keeping the language as is, and then providing a provision that if they find that the space doesn't quite suit the planting plan, but in the permit, that we consult, and there's like a special permit that, okay, so only one fits of this species, it will be perfect, but then we can do it in a coordinated effort, and then there's a demonstration that the board takes this very seriously.
Mhm.
Because like, once these things are done and nobody cares, and you just like write this in, it's a possibility that this could be voted to pass at town meeting, and most people just don't understand what really is at stake. What does that mean for the work of us, the planning board, the tree committee, in trying to reestablish a canopy? With one vote, yes, they may not. If they haven't really studied what's going on between the permitting process, they may not understand what is really at stake.
So,
Can I just make one suggestion?
is it about the bylaw? Cause I need
It's a-
to like,
It's a creative suggestion, which is, she's right about trees being planted and dying.
yes,
And I was gonna suggest that the tree committee and the tree warden, Mike Peretti, should, when a tree is planted for a permit, then Mike Peretti should watch it for 3 years or whatever.
Chris, do we have a GIS database of our street trees? I'm getting off topic here.
I'm asking the tree committee. I remember when we did the first Arbor Day, I thought we had to plot all the existing trees, but I don't know how.
I don't think it's up to date, but Michael Peretti does have a record of all of the requests for tree maintenance and tree removal. So right now we're going by that, and we're trying to like keep a new record and try to plot on Google Earth maps the empty spaces. So, and then also try to identify where like the heritage trees are.
Yeah.
But really no, because there are many trees, and I think it's more, I think it's more pragmatic for us to plot where there aren't any.
You and I've been trying to get together to talk about how we
Yes.
can collaborate in this issue, so I definitely want to keep trying to do that. I apologize, my schedule's been so terrible lately, but, yeah, oh, Eileen's had her hand raised, so I'd like to let Eileen go, and then you can go to traffic control. Eileen, go ahead.
Cat.
Where's the cat?
Yeah, I know. Eileen, did you have a comment that you wanted to make about the tree issue? Can you hear us, Eileen?
She
You just need to unmute yourself.
Oh. You're unmuted. Meow.
Well, let's see. Sometimes I get like a little email from Eileen saying, I'm trying to talk. Eileen, I really was hoping if you had a comment, we'd be able to hear you. Are you able to speak? Put your hand down if you're able to speak and we're just not hearing you. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you, Eileen.
Bye, Eileen.
Hand raising signals.
Eileen, can you email me?
Yeah, we'll take written comment from you, Eileen. I apologize that we can't hear you. Yeah, Malcolm?
At our last meeting, I asked about, changing 6.2.8, which requires a special permit for deviations, and, I was told that I could bring that up at this meeting. And I think that might be a way out of this. If we leave this to 25 feet, and we change 6.2.8 to, so that the planning board can grant deviations based on site plan review. It would eliminate a bunch of the problems that we've had where it's impractical, but the last tree issue we had was with Multicultural Bridge, very small nonprofit who was just renting a quarter of a building, but it triggered the trees. And so there was no place for trees because it was all gravel in front of the building, so there was no way to build trees there. So we had to help. I mean, there's no way they could afford a special permit. So we had to help them work around not requiring site plan review. But if we made site plan review, if we made deviations based on the planning board site plan review, then it wouldn't be as costly for people to deviate if they had.
That would be a waiver, right? Is that,
Well, there were deviations used in the bylaw now,
okay,
but it's a deviation requiring a special permit.
okay,
We don't want it to be a special permit. That'd be
No.
crazy.
Well, it is now,
yeah,
and I would suggest that we change it to a planning board site plan review approval.
okay, then we'll take that comment.
Yeah, ideally too, whenever we review a project on Route 7, it should be, we should have some form of notification of tree committee so they can show up to the meeting.
Yeah. I don't have any concern at all referring or notifying, and in fact,
We always do.
we refer to the list that we have for planting. But hold on just 1 second. So my only concern is just present company excluded. That committee has like formed and unformed and not had quorum and had, issues volunteer committees can have. And so I'm hesitant to make it a requirement, but I think an
No, I don't wanna
invitation is
I
certainly.
think requirement to notify the committee is fine,
Mhm.
whether they show up or not.
Mhm.
That way we don't have to schedule another meeting for them to go before the committee.
Mhm,
They can just come
Yeah,
and you can
or
show
we
up.
can refer plans or
You
whatever.
or
Yeah,
whoever can show up here and make comment on the tree plan.
okay.
So, Brandy,
Yes.
this is a question for Chris. Because we're the planning board, but what I was wondering about with the issues of wanting to make that corridor on Route 7 lovely, beautiful, with canopies of trees. Can the town ever become proactive develop a master plan for trees along there and say, this is optimally where we'd like to see these trees appear. Sometimes it's right in the middle of a parking space, sometimes it's somewhere else. But if you can step back and look at what would make that street attractive from a tree perspective and a walking perspective. I'm just wondering what the town can do. It might not be in the purview of the planning board. But is there something that the tree committee could propose? I don't know.
There probably is. Yeah, I mean, there are cities and towns and municipalities that do tree master plans. Sure. Particularly important in places that don't have many trees or urban areas that have particular impacts from urban heating with hot summers and climate change. Tree plans are becoming very, very important. How they're implemented is another matter. Obviously, the town has most control over the property that it owns, whether it's the right of way or town-owned sites. Least control over private property, and then state highways somewhere in the middle in terms of the control spectrum. The plan can be done, and you know, I'd submit that the tree committee would be a great entity to spearhead something like that. I do have some comments from my.
Oh, Eileen, okay, did she?
So Eileen's first question was, how many folks are attending? There are 12 online and 2 in the room, aside from the board. And the comment regarding the trees, and her microphone is testing fine on her end. Just so. A few years ago, the board agreed that someone who couldn't make probably the 25 feet could plant a tree elsewhere in town instead. That I don't recall,
Okay.
but
I think we talked about that.
maybe we did talk about.
May have had to do with the staff and phone or something.
Eileen, if you raise your hand again, I will automatically check my email. She just raised it?
No, but we got a ding for somebody getting an email. So, okay, all right, thank you very much.
It's
Oh,
raised.
yes.
Oh, I just wanted to
Okay,
answer Jackie's comments, or just respond to it. We are trying to, the problem with tree committee and a master plan, planting plan, is we are working on it. However, the issue is budget, because all the tree planting goes through Department of Public Works. And as I mentioned earlier, they have a budget for tree maintenance and tree removal. And as I understand it, the director is trying to put in a line item budget for planting exclusively that needs to be passed at town meeting. It is not as much as would be required to plant, you know, more than, I don't know, a dozen trees a year, I think, or maybe a little bit more than that, but definitely not enough to cover all of the places that we would ideally like to cover. So, but it's a start, and but again, it's a budget issue.
Thank you very much.
You know, I just was thinking that since we have trees in our bylaw, maybe we should have a representative from both boards. You know, to attend our meetings and to attend your meetings.
Okay, all right. Mr. Kraus, do you have a comment or question on the section 6.2.7 trees? Go ahead and unmute yourself, sir.
Okay,
Oh, we can hear you, yay.
yes, I'm relatively new to this area, and this is my first time participating via Zoom on this
Welcome.
process. So I'm just a little nervous about participating, but I do want to say that the woman who's been presenting with the white jacket on her lap, basically, I agree with her. And I say this both as a person who's very interested in astronomy and low light, and trees can block my view, but I also really am pro-tree. So I'm just going to say I agree with her. I don't need to restate everything she said, but I want to give a vote of support for what she's been saying.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. And good job. All right, we'll move on to item number 7 then, seeing no more hands raised on this particular issue. I'm sorry, item number 6. I apologize, everyone. Item number 6, amending section 3.1.4 table of use regulations to allow multi-unit residential and mixed-use development by right in the B2 zone and to require that such development include affordable housing. So Chris had given an overview of what that means. Do we need him to refresh on that since it's been a few minutes, or we all recall? We recall, so you had a question about special permit.
Well, inclusionary zoning and
Well, Chris didn't mention the footnote. And I had, when I was looking at it, I had a question too about changing it to yes. I thought we were gonna add a footnote, and the footnote is what it was gonna say. That if you choose to do 10% affordable, you can forego this, but then you're by right.
As drafted, the table of use regulations for 9 units in the B2 zone would go from special permit to yes with a footnote. And the footnote says, in any development containing 9 or more residential units, at least 10% of those units shall be dedicated as a unit affordable to a household earning not more than 100% of the area median income. The footnotes there, and that's what is the affordable housing requirement. So multi-unit, 9 or more units is allowed by right. But it must have 10% of those must be affordable. There's
Yeah,
no
that's
special permit around it. It's in the table of use regulations.
Right,
If
so
you want to make it a special permit, you could. Or
no,
you can make it a special permit with an asterisk that says, if you add affordable housing, that's by right.
that's
Yeah,
the
I think
whole
that
point.
Maybe what.
That's the incentive.
that makes
That-
more sense.
That was the incentive. That's what it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah, and so then it goes from being inclusionary to being
Incentive.
incentivized.
Yeah.
What about the 4-story?
So wait, can you hold on that issue so that we can decide on this first issue?
Okay, are we gonna decide on it, or we're just?
Well, I just want to make sure we've got enough commentary on it, Malcolm.
Sure.
So say that again. You're suggesting different, I didn't
So,
follow, I
9
apologize.
units or more would stay by special permit in the B2 zone.
I see, okay.
So
But a
take
footnote.
away
Yeah.
the Ys, put an asterisk next to the SB. And
Yeah.
then change the asterisk to say, if you do this, you can do it by right.
So you'd add a line of text to the footnote about the special permit being
But it would be by.
by
It's
right,
not special permit, it would be by right if there's
The-
affordable housing.
right,
It'd
okay,
be-
that's
yeah,
fine,
Yeah, it'd be special permit
Thank
in
you.
the use table,
Yeah.
and then by right in your note.
great.
Maybe in the
okay,
use
I
table, it
understand
should have a Y and then a slash.
Oh, boy.
that. Yeah, that sounds. The footnote. Okay, and then Malcolm, your question was that and
If
amend the
we're gonna
table of
do that, I would
dimensional
like to
requirements.
apply the 4 stories to the affordable as well.
We can talk about the height, I guess, when we discuss it, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Let's see,
There's
somebody
Eileen
looks
sent
like
you
they
an
have their hand. Eileen's got an email for you.
Eileen, go ahead and try to unmute and speak, but I will check my email.
Mm,
You're muted now. You're unmuted.
That has got to be hugely frustrating, Eileen, I'm sorry. we still
Check the
can't-
Zoom settings.
She's got a new
I-
computer.
The same problem myself.
I think she didn't turn the volume
No, recently I've had to call in on my phone when I'm on Zoom and be on the computer. It's super, super annoying, so. Okay, Eileen's comment came through on email.
Right, this is regarding number 6 on the B2 zone that we're talking about.
Okay,
now.
yeah,
What guarantee exists that with no special permit, the resulting building will not be inappropriate / ugly / big block of concrete?
You can, this is kind of always, to me, a specious argument, because any building right now that we've got, you can do, again, the 20,000 square foot, gigantic, ugly, disgusting building. So, and we can't do anything about it. There's lots of uses that can go up there that, that can end up that way.
Plus, it's not a guarantee a special permit is gonna produce a beautiful.
That's
building.
right. And
Yeah, I can answer that because I had the same concern. And Pedro convinced me, I mean, if we allow commercial buildings of that size by right, what's the difference in residential buildings? So that's fair, right?
And I'll just add the comment, there's a huge difference because we're housing people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, why should we?
Yeah.
And if they, if they have to live in an ugly place, I mean, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make in order to house people. I don't want it, obviously, but
Yeah, I think you understand.
Where are the B2 zones?
Sure,
I'll put it back up. on
Yeah.
the screen.
Chris had a little graphic.
It's basically
They're
Route
basically-
7 north and south of town.
Yeah,
With
So
a little,
outside-
with a little,
So like Stockbridge Road,
from Belcher Square up to
kind of past Guido's where you're building.
further up,
the plazas,
yeah,
the Big Y Plaza is part of the B2. So
can you see my cursor
from
on the
then down.
screen?
Yeah.
So, Stockbridge Road from Belcher Square north to CHP. And then in the downtown, it's, near Domanies and whatnot, just south of the Red Bridge. All the way down to, Elm Street where the Berkshire Bank is, so that's all B2. And then just south of downtown, it includes, from Town Hall south to the new roundabout. That's B2. Then it skips a bit, there's MXD, there's a different zone from the roundabout south to the woods.
Fairgrounds.
And then from Silver Street south to the senior center is another stretch of the B2 zone.
So if I'm thinking about the end of Silver Street, is the cemetery, does
Mhm.
it include Silver Street or just
south
kind of
side.
running down towards Big Y?
The cemetery
part.
is in fact B2 zone.
Where cemeteries are prohibited.
But it, yeah, but
In
It's
those
a
areas,
legally pre-existing.
it's already.
so in those areas, if the developer came in and bought up some of the property that was there, what is the largest unit they'd be able to build without having to go through a special permit process if this,
What kind of building?
an apartment building, say?
Mhm. Yep, 9 or more units would be, if it had, so with this proposal, if it was 9 or more units. And didn't have affordable, based on some of the discussions we're talking about now, if it didn't have affordable, it would need a special permit. And if it had 10% affordable, it would need a site plan review.
And they could do live work units, by right?
It depends mostly on the size of the site
Yeah.
itself. So. If you're building a multi-unit building that has setbacks required to the fronts and the sides and the rear yards. And there's a 75% lot coverage maximum, so that already tells you how big the area you can build on. The height tells you how big how far you can go up, and you have parking requirements, 1 space for every unit at least. You have to put those somewhere on the site. So site by site is really determined that way, just how much quote unquote yield you could have on a site. But in general, the way the proposal is on the table is 9 units or more would be by right, or all those other things in control of what the ultimate number of units would be. Now, the board has just thrown something else out there. 9 or more units is by special permit, so this board has ultimate control. Unless there's affordable housing in it, then we can allow it to happen by right with just the controls I spoke of earlier.
Does eliminating the special permit mean that people who live near these sites would no longer have any input about how they were built, how much is built, the size?
They always have input, but there wouldn't be a public hearing.
So we have,
Special permit triggers a public hearing.
I
It'd be
feel
a
like-
less formal input.
I guess
That's
I
true.
feel like
And they
that's-
wouldn't,
it's
and
important
the
here.
butters wouldn't be notified.
Yeah, they'd be notified, but I guess
No,
if
they
there
would
was,
not be. Unless it's a public hearing.
Yeah, they would, I guess I feel like that it seems underhanded. I think that it's a value to the residents that live in the community and that people at least have an opportunity to sit in this room or attend Zoom and tell you what their concerns are and not feel like something's being built next to them one day and they didn't know anything about it. It's not fair. And I know your intention is that you have what people will call NIMBYism, where it's not my backyard. But in an attempt to want to thwart that, to take away the voice of the public and the people just seems pretty unfair.
Well, the public always has a voice because everything that goes into zoning is voted on by the public. So there's always a voice there. You know, we've come across issues in the town where certain developments of our most precious commodity, which is housing, has been either turned down or just discouraged because of the process. It's very difficult to get through these types of projects through the entire town process. That's why we're proposing that if you provide this benefit to the town, which we desperately need, we have, you know, dwindling populations in schools, we have businesses that can barely staff their stores and their restaurants. We have, you know, many other needs across the board that are not being met just simply because people can no longer live in town. That coupled with, you know, all the other issues that are associated with the housing market in our town, it's important, I think, for this board and for really every board in town to do something to try to incentivize these projects. And that's the only purpose here. So somebody, a developer, will have to give something back to the community, which is to offer these units at a rate that is affordable to people who are going to stock our stores, hopefully families that will increase the population of our schools and so forth and so forth. I understand your point, but you know, the public always has a say, and you have a say. If you don't like the rule that we're proposing, you can show up at town meeting, you can talk to your friends, and you can vote against it.
So, I don't want to debate.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are these developers required to work with a design advisory board, or does that still exist in this town?
That's a good question. No one can answer.
Yeah.
Yes, it still exists, whether it meets or not, it's the.
We haven't met in over a year.
There's some,
But would they
the
be
mandate of,
required to
the
be-
man,
So,
the
okay,
mandate of the design advisory committee has a certain place within town. It's basically what I call liquor store to liquor store. So from Domaines to Estradas. And so anything really that goes in there should come before design advisory. For building, renovation, new construction, mostly what the committee sees are signs.
Electronic
sign
signs.
applications.
But would it? I mean, is it required?
It's required. It's up to the building inspector to
He's the one who calls the
calls the meeting.
so I want to keep us on focus here. I think the other thing that this board is grappling with, just sort of a global issue, and it's represented in the list of items that are here, is trying to establish some baseline parameters for not only what is already in the code for setbacks and height, that's what we call bulk parameters, but the design standards that we had identified up in section or in proposed article 2, the performance standards, just to try and lay out some ground rules for the instances where they're not subject to design advisory. So,
Including the lighting that we've been discussing.
right. And if we go down the aesthetic rabbit hole, every one of us has got a different aesthetic, I can guarantee it. So Eileen sent you more emails. Or she's trying to comment again. Eileen, go ahead.
I don't have a current email yet. A new email. When I do, I'll let you know.
Eileen, I'm really sorry.
You can always call in also, Eileen. Using the phone on the agenda.
Yeah, if anyone finds that
You
they,
just mute your computer and use your phone audio.
I think her cat's got.
she
the
may
phone.
not need to mute the computer because we can't hear anything. So if Eileen does call in, or anybody who's having trouble, decides to use the phone call in to make comments on any of the aforementioned, just let me know which one you want to talk about, but we'll proceed ahead to amending the zoning map, Article 7, amending the zoning map on Silver Street to change the zoning of the parcels from R2 to R1A. I think Chris gave a nice summary there. Mr. Unger, I know, had a comment, so we'll go to him first. Mr. Unger? you
I'm
there?
here. I was planting a tree.
No. Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
so Chris, I have a couple of questions for you. There's 3 parcels, right? And they're owned by how many people? 2, right?
Did you repeat that, sir?
How many different owners of the 3 parcels are there?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Right.
I hear 3. I hear that there are 3. Somebody in the room is saying there are 3 parcels
Okay.
and 3 owners.
So how many under an R2, how many additional units can be built on that 6 acres now?
We haven't completed a development assessment. We have, yeah, go ahead.
It depends, sir, on how the lots are configured. There's about 600 feet of frontage on Silver Street.
Right, so what do you,
And
so there are 4 allowed?
In the R2 zone, it requires 150 feet of frontage,
So 4.
150 feet of width. The frontage can actually be slightly less, but let's use 150 feet. So
Okay,
so the entire 600 feet could be split into 4 lots currently.
right.
If a subdivision road was added in, you could create more lots if you created more frontage. There's a lot of different ways any parcel could be developed, but currently this side of the street has like much less frontage than, for example, the triangle area I described earlier that has frontage both on Maple and on Silver Street. This only has the 600 feet on Silver Street, allowing for a maximum of 4 lots in the R2 zone.
Right, so what
Awesome.
happens to the space behind the, what would happen to the other, so those 4 lots are built, like on Maple, then there's still like 4 or 5 acres left. Could a developer come in and develop those too?
It's tough to answer, hypothetical questions. This parcel has the one large historic house that has the 3 units in it, presumably. But there's no guarantee. Presumably, somebody would keep that existing structure and those units and build around it. So maybe the other parts of the grass area fronting Silver Street would be split out as their own parcels. So maybe you have the one in the back, the big house, and maybe 2 others on Silver Street. If you kept the house that's there now with the 3 units, it's tough to get too much more intensity on that site.
Okay,
Now, whether it's
now if
R2
it
or
becomes
R1.
an R1A, okay? How many more units can be built on that property relative to the R2?
So Chris, I mean, I think the answer is the same. It depends on how it's configured. But you had pointed out in your narrative summary to the public and to us that the parcel or the cluster of parcels immediately north on Silver Street is about the same area, and it has, I don't know, like 1, 2,
12
3,
to
4,
15.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 that I'm counting anyway, that I can
There's
see.
probably a little more. There's about 12 to 15, right?
And
So, and that 6 acres is a R1A or is it 2?
that 6 acres north of Silver Street is R1A, with the parcel count that Brandy just described of how many, Brandy?
There was 13 in the
13.
view.
But, and this is a very big but, the triangle north of Silver Street has frontage on 2 sides.
That's true.
It has Silver Street and Maple Avenue.
Mhm.
So many more lots can be created on the north side of Silver Street in the R1A than could be created on the south side of Silver Street, even if it were R1A.
No, it
Because
doesn't
there's
have
just
any
not much
frontage on,
frontage.
it does not have frontage on Silver. Cause I own the piece on Silver.
There's poor lots. in there.
It's,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, but what I'm getting at is if you change it from 2 to 1A, then it probably can develop, more homes can be built.
Correct.
Correct?
Probably a lot more. Like,
I wouldn't say,
no.
I wouldn't say it's a lot more, no. I would
well,
not
but
dare-
on the R2, on an R1A, you can build 3 to 4 homes per acre.
You
Yeah,
have
but
to
still
have
100
frontage.
foot frontage.
Yeah, you have to have, the frontage is the amount of property that's on a public street and you
No, I
have
know
to
what
have-
frontage is.
Right, so
So
the
we-
frontage is what drives the ability to divide the land up. And so it's shorter for this section of land we're looking at changing the zoning for than it is for the example immediately to the north, which has frontage both on Silver and on Maple.
Right.
So these lots are likely to be, narrow and deep. Because they're 100 foot wide and then the lot is that far deep, so they're probably gonna be a regular shape and that kind of thing, but.
The
So-
difference in frontage Chris pointed out was 50 feet, right? The
Yeah.
R2 was 150 and
So if
the
we're like,
R1A is
you
100.
jam them in, you jam in 6 at 100.
I mean, I think.
Yeah, and portions of this area, as I said, are
Are steep
Not
and wet.
practically developable.
Yeah, so you can put frontage on that, western side. that's all.
In my opinion, we're actually reducing the developability of a project because you can't do an OSRD in an R1A.
Could you explain that a little bit
So
more?
the OSRD is a zoning mechanism that allows you to do cluster housing
Mhm.
in exchange for open space. So right now, some developer can go in there, buy that big lot and do, up to 60 units if it has space in there. Obviously, there's not enough space there to do up to 60 units, but they can easily do a 20 unit, development there.
No, they can't.
A special permit. No, it's a planning board special permit, yeah. That's-
We should let Mr. Under finish.
Yeah.
Wait. Stay there for a second. So under an R2, you think somebody could put 20 units over there and they would be attached? Like like the other developments?
Yes, they could be attached, they can be all in one building, they could be
If approved through a special. permit.
if approved through a special permit. Yeah.
Whereas with an R1A, they'd have to be detached, right?
No, that's not
No,
allowed.
that-
That type of development would not be allowed in.
I know,
R1.
I'm saying they would have to be detached. That would not be allowed.
You wouldn't,
It doesn't matter if they're attached or not. That type of development that allows cluster housing would not be allowed in the R1A.
Right, that's what
Well,
I'm
the
saying.
cluster
It
housing
would
doesn't-
have to be single type family homes.
It could be a structure that has one unit, it could be a structure that has 2 units in it,
Right,
or 3,
but it could have like 10 or 20 of them.
It's the frontage and that really controls the density of lots. And then the table of use requirements, which allows different types of residential uses, is very similar between the R1A and the R2.
Because the
Except,
R1A is more restricted.
except as Pedro mentioned, the R1A doesn't allow the higher density cluster developments that are currently allowed by special permit only in the R2 zone.
Okay,
No, that's
could
not
I
a-
find out who is proposing this change at this point?
This is the
we are,
planning board's discussion.
You are.
yes, sir.
Okay, so do you need to, so what procedurally, what happens now? You vote on doing this tonight and then it gets on the vote for the city meeting?
We are taking public comment and then we're going to deliberate on it and decide whether or not we want to continue with it as a warrant article. And then it would go to town meeting and there would be more discussion at town meeting and it would be voted on at town meeting. And if it passes, then it goes to the Attorney General's for review. And then if it clears review there, comes back and becomes implemented. In
Okay,
our
so,
zoning bylaw.
so the real, both these properties, or probably all three, have been for sale for like a year or so. You know that, right?
Yes,
We do.
So are you getting any, the real estate agents are probably saying, well, how am I supposed to sell these houses if the zoning is in flux? Wouldn't you think?
We don't know, sir.
yeah, we haven't, that's not been part of the discussion.
I'm a real estate broker and I haven't heard anything from the listing agent.
The Moultrie House is currently pending sale to a developer on Maple Avenue who builds modular homes.
I did hear that. I did hear that, the parcel with the 3 unit is under contract.
And the Haddads own both the field in front and the house. House been on the market for 3 years. But it's right next to the railroad tracks. Its front is a railroad crossing and your across the street neighbor, one of them is a violent sex offender. So I think that,
That's good advertising.
yeah, I think
That's probably more than zoning.
I think it's part of it. I just wonder why you guys selected this particular parcel for rezoning, like what made you look at it and say, hey, we should do something about this. What was your thinking?
I brought it to the board as an idea, knowing that it had been on the market for a while. Knowing that it had water and sewer and in theory could have more more units built there. And it would be reflective of the development of that residential area immediately on the north side of Sutter Street. So it would more closely mirror is the wrong word, resemble the development on the north side of Silver Street. So it seemed like it could be appropriate, and so I brought it to the board for consideration.
So does the change in zoning allow it to be built up more or less?
In theory, it could be built up slightly more than it is now.
Well, we don't know that though.
Yeah.
We don't know that because, I mean, it,
Depends on how the
depends.
property is
Yeah,
split
it
into
depends.
lots.
I mean,
Well, there's only 4 units on it now. I mean,
hold on, please. Ms. Hockler's talking.
It would depend on what happens with the other parcel, whether someone comes in
Yeah.
to purchase the other side, although I guess, I mean, I feel like our dream of home ownership for people who are struggling for resources shouldn't always be to create an apartment for them. That we need to create opportunities in town for people to own their own homes, and I've highlighted to you why the current Haddad house is not the most, people aren't knocking down the door to buy it. But rather than see the house destroyed, I'd love to work with Construct or something to see if we couldn't help people attain their own home. I think that just because we need affordable housing doesn't mean they have to live in an apartment. I also think that we have to kind of shape this idea that just because you are forced to live in an apartment means that you want a blue collar job. That one thing that the pandemic did for us was create an enormous amount of opportunity in terms of online employment, and what we're seeing happening with, shopkeepers, and you just don't have people who are working our stores. It's a national problem. It's not just a Great Barrington problem. I'm more than wanting to see our town and our rural community and our green space be eaten up by apartment building after apartment building after apartment building. I'd love to find a way to maybe work together to save maybe that particular house to start and make it affordable for someone who wants to own their own home.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I think a lot of the work that we do, or I'm sure that a lot of the work that we do is to save all that open green space that you cherish so much and to build here in these areas that can handle, larger developments that are serviced by town water and sewer and roads and the rest of it. So
But there's green space there. There's only 2 houses there. I hate to see the space that's there be eliminated to mirror all of the construction on the opposite side.
yeah, well, in this particular case, it's not a zoning change to create apartment buildings there. It's literally to create a low density development, but just more of the low density development, like what you see on the north side of Silver Street.
So I want to give, there's another person who's got their hand raised.
I still have one more
CBC.
question.
Oh,
Okay,
Mr.
I
Unger.
wasn't quite
Can-
finished.
Okay, is it about this matter?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead then.
Okay, so you do all understand that you just agreed to put 30 units, literally 100 feet from this area.
No, sir, we did not.
We did not.
No, sir, and is this a question?
Yeah, no, it's a
What's the
statement.
question,
It's,
sir?
you've agreed to, you allowed the guy to put 30 units at the old age home. I was
This
there
is
when
not
you were
related
there.
to that,
That's unrelated.
this is
It's a
unrelated.
148 Maple.
That
It's a
is
different
not the
zone.
matter before the board right now. That's not the matter before the board. So do you have a question about the proposed zoning for the land that is currently R2 south of Silver Street?
Yes, I'd like to know how many more units can be built there now and how many more units can be built if it changes to R1A.
We
didn't
we
answer
don't
the
know that
question.
because we don't know that there are a lot of variables. And so we cannot answer that with any specificity.
You can't approximate?
No, sir.
There could be about 4 conforming lots, 4 to 5 on the. I would say actually 4 conforming lots on the existing frontage in the existing zone. There could be 6 conforming lots on the existing frontage if the zoning was changed.
So how many units does that represent?
It could be 2 units per lot. Currently, the board tonight was discussing other changes that could allow 3 units per lot.
They could have
You would
3 units
need
per
it-
lot now, one's an ADU.
You would need, you could do 2 units per lot now plus a small accessory dwelling unit by right. So if you had 4 conforming lots there, each lot could have 3 units plus an accessory.
Okay, let that be in the minutes.
That's 6.
Okay,
On the
thank
other
you.
hand, in the B2, if they put a PERD in there, then it's a much more dense development. It could be as, under the current zoning, it could be as many as.
I think we're confusing the
R2.
issue, yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, not B2.
let
I'm
me-
sorry, I
so
used the wrong word.
CDC
That's
itself
really the
for
right
that.
answer.
So, Mr. Unger, we're gonna move on. Thank you for your comments. We've got a hand raised for CDC of South Berkshire. If you could just state your name and let us know who's speaking.
Hi, my name is Carol Bosco Bowman, and I live at 5 Hart Street in Housatonic. As the
Hi,
executive director, hi.
Hi,
As,
Carol.
hi, am I allowed to make a comment now, or are we asking questions?
Yes,
on.
please, yeah.
Okay, great. As the executive director of the Community Development Corporation of South Berkshire, I would like to submit the following statement in support of the planning board's proposed zoning changes as they pertain to 2 and 3 unit structures and ADUs in the town of Great Barrington. Firstly, I'd like to applaud the town's leadership and willingness to address our area's housing crisis with a multi-pronged entrepreneurial approach. At the CDCSB, we believe it's necessary to produce and preserve housing that is affordable to everyone in our community. The proposed zoning changes being discussed tonight are pragmatic in keeping with the town's adopted smart growth principles. Modifying the town's existing zoning regulations will allow for more flexible and diverse types of housing, as well as for streamlined construction timelines. As we all know, it takes a lot of time to build new housing, and there are so many area families who have been in the need of an affordable place to call home for months, if not years. Those numbers are self-evident. For example, we broke ground on Windrush Commons about a year ago, and we will have 49 affordable apartments available this spring. Over 180 people submitted applications for that housing lottery. Members of our community regularly call or email me to tell me about a parcel or property that seems as though it would be a great location for new affordable and workforce housing, both rentals and homes for sale. Unfortunately, it is almost always ruled out due to zoning restrictions. I believe that the proposed zoning bylaw revisions will allow the CDC, SB, and our colleague organizations to have a greater impact on the housing crisis more than ever before. And that in turn will help local families remain here, build generational wealth, and keep our economy vibrant. So thank you for listening and for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, is there anyone else who has a comment on the Silver Street zoning proposal? All right, seeing and hearing none.
Do you want to see if anybody's on for the wireless?
Yeah, exactly. The last one is the amending section 9.3.16.5 of the wireless telecommunication overlay district, and this is the petition that came before us. So is there anyone who is associated with the citizens petition for the zoning change on wireless communication facilities?
Seeing it.
Okay, is there,
What's the protocol? Then?
The board still has to consider.
yeah, we take out,
It may not
But
have the benefit of fully understanding it, but
sure, yeah, no, that's a little, that makes it a little tricky. So does anyone have any comments or questions on the proposal for the modifications?
yeah, I was hoping someone would explain it.
Wireless telecommunication facilities. I feel like I need an explanation as well, and some of the details of it. And where it would apply and,
If anybody is present, I'd like to make the point that if nobody shows up to speak to this petition, it's gonna go nowhere
right, that's true,
At town meeting.
at town meeting.
yeah. Is there anyone in the public online that would like to speak on this petition item? Raise your hand. Okay, oh, Ed, but no,
sorry, Ed.
did you hang up on Ed?
No, I was covering his hand with my cursor.
Hello, you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, go ahead.
I'm not part of this. I actually have a question which you may not be able to answer, which is, are we allowed to do this? Or is this one of those rules that the federal government, the FCC says, you don't get to do this?
We don't know.
That's a
I can
question
answer.
we have, yes,
Okay.
that's a really good question, and we have that question as well, and that's why we were hoping someone representing the petition could come forward and give us an explanation.
Okay,
This deals with the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions, then we have no say in it, because the US code specifically prohibits towns and state from, well, here's what it says, no state or local government or instrumentality thereof. May regulate
I'm sorry.
placement, construction, or modification of personal wireless facilities on the basis of environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent such facilities comply with the commission's regulations.
It sounds like that there may be revising that because of the higher
Frequency,
frequency.
Well, it may be,
But
but
it's associated with 5G, apparently.
right, but we're still limited.
We don't
by
know. Yeah.
we don't, yeah, I feel like
waiting for
we
the
don't
SEC to
know,
come up with
yeah,
regulations.
yeah, so I'd like to get some more information on
Yeah.
it.
I think that for-
Go ahead, Ed.
I assume if it's at town meeting, we'll have, our attorney will have looked into it. Doesn't he? When on, so, also,
By our attorney-
I'd like to
by
see
our
that.
attorney, you mean the town attorney?
the town attorney, sorry. All of them. At 15 Pleasant Street for the record, Ed Abrams.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, if there's no comment on that, and no further comment from members of the public on any of the more items, no, okay. I have let my phone fall asleep, and so I've lost my agenda. Here, okay, so then we will have a vote to close public hearing.
So I'm second.
Motion in a second, motion from Pedro, second from Jonathan. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. We'll move forward then with discussion, revisions, and vote to recommend or not recommend to town meeting. Shall we take it from the top?
Take it from the top. if
Okay, thank you very much
thank
for
you,
coming.
thanks.
Yep, thank you.
The board can go through.
Yeah, let's do
listen,
it.
You know. You've heard public comment on some of the articles, you can go through each one
Yeah.
and decide to move forward as written, you can revise.
So number one, We had no comment. We've looked at this several times.
I have one comment.
You do have one comment? Oh,
Yeah, it's
sorry.
because I noticed that on the strikeout is in the definition of family is the phrase of not more than 5. Which in essence limited the number of unrelated people in a unit. So basically it was putting a cap on the number of people in a unit, basically.
Mhm.
Are we okay with eliminating that?
The definition for family said that if there's not more than 5 people who are not related, that is a family.
Right.
It doesn't restrict the number of people in a unit.
Well, it does, in a sense. It says the number of people in the unit is a family
Right.
related
But,
by blood,
but if they-
or up to 5 people who are unrelated, who would then be considered a family.
the only limit is on unrelated people.
Right.
It could be a family of 30 people.
Oh, yeah, it could be a family of a lot. But I mean,
Right, so, okay.
I'm just saying we're doing this, and I'm in favor of it, but is everybody in favor of taking away the limits on the number of people in the unit? This is some limit,
The number of
unrelated people.
Right,
that's, I just,
yeah.
sorry, but.
No, it's-
No,
It's a valid point. I
It
mean, but I,
Yes, I mean, what's the benefit of one over the other?
can I think of an unintended consequence?
I know, I mean, I think that's the point, is to think
Yeah.
of unintended consequence.
Uh,
I do think too, there may need to be some messaging around family, because we are certainly not anti-family. We are
I
just
know, I
trying,
was looking for words.
to make-
It's like we're gonna eliminate family.
We are-
from bylaw.
we are,
Probably not a
we are
good
trying to be more inclusive in terms of who may habitate together,
Mhm.
recognizing that there's a larger mix of blended groups of people.
Yeah.
Chris's explanation was good. I thought.
Yeah.
And framed it well.
Yeah. The article I came across was called The 7 Gun Conundrum. 7 retired nuns who want to-
Oh.
That's amazing. amazing.
Take care.
So do we want to vote to recommend this one to town meeting as is currently written?
Before you vote, Sharon Gregory, I see your hand. The public hearing has been closed. The board is moving on to its recommendation, unless the chair wants to.
I mean, I guess in terms of, the section 241, if Ms. Gregory has a comment that pertains.
Oh, hearing.
Yeah, I know.
You covered that.
Well, we just have it in-
That was the point of the members' public hearing.
But I'm okay with letting her speak.
I just want to say this.
Yeah, no, I recognize we did have a public hearing. We asked several times for people to comment. Sharon, do you want to go ahead?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay, Sharon Gregory, Hollenbeck Avenue.
Yeah.
I don't know where, this is appropriate to ask a question, but just let me know if it's not this time. In terms of the Silver Street proposed changes, at what point would the board consider any traffic changes and impact on traffic? I use that street all the time, and I know it's very difficult it's a little curvy and narrow to get onto 23. Not so much a problem of 7, but would that be part of your proposal?
There's no specific development proposal, and so any traffic impacts that are specific to a type of development would be evaluated on their particular merits at the time an application came forward.
But generally, moving from 4 lots to potentially 6 lots is not a
Not
not a
traffic trigger.
significant traffic generator. The traffic on Silver Street is much more likely to be generated by Route 23 or commercial development on Route 7.
Or if Guido's is having a sale or Big Y is having a sale.
So.
Well, but
I did.
You're talking about units with, either multiple units and families up to 30 or whatever. So I think it would be, I think other people would think it would be impactful. Could
I
be.
just, we want to be clear that there's not a specific development proposal, and there's a huge number of variables that might result in the development of the parcel now as it is currently zoned, or if the zoning was changed. And so that's why Chris was trying to simplify it for all of our sakes and show that if you divided it up based on frontage, you're looking at 4 versus 6 lots. So it's, that's sort of the simplest development scenario, and a good kind of measure of what we might expect. But there's like an almost infinite number of potential scenarios, and we just simply cannot evaluate all of them. So, okay.
We'll make it clear though. I mean, when we
There's-
used the numbers 20 and 30, that was under the existing zoning.
That's the existing zoning, not the proposed
existing
zoning.
zoning allows 20 to 30. The revised zoning wouldn't allow that.
I'm not clear who's allowing 20 or 30.
The PERD,
No,
Oh,
it's not big enough for a PERD, but OSRD it is.
an OSRD, not a PERD, an OSRD.
We're
and
going
again,
way down. the
existing
road.
zoning allows only by special permit, potentially more intense development by special permit.
Yes,
There is not a proposal under the existing zoning for 20 or 30 units.
no,
Thank you.
Okay, so the answer is when the, a proposed development comes in and raises questions of some people as to traffic issues, that's when it would be addressed.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we'll go back to, let's see, Chris, I think you were going to, I don't know, I lost my place.
We had a motion. and a
We had a
second.
motion.
we didn't have a motion yet.
Thank you. So we had a motion and a second. We have any further discussion? No further discussion. So, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is unanimous.
Okay, hold on, please.
Sure.
There was a motion to send it to ATM.
I don't think anybody made a motion.
I didn't see a motion.
I made a motion.
Yeah, Pedro.
Pedro, but it was to send it to the
I'm
ATM.
sorry,
Yeah.
could you just do that again?
Make a motion to pass Article 1 to for recommendation of the town warrant.
Thank you.
I seconded it, yeah.
Or maybe that was.
Okay, are you okay, Cam? If we proceed?
I never heard that motion.
I'm sorry. that we
Well, Pedro talks very quietly. He probably didn't like it.
Whether or not these go to town meeting as Article 1, Article 2, or
Understood.
one big article is.
We don't have to decide
Still-
that.
We're not gonna
Still to be
decide that. We're
determined.
fine, just
Yeah.
about the concept.
Okay, item number 2, amending 6.4 performance standards to include the subsections for site design and lighting standards. So there were 2 comments that I saw here. One was, I have a note about striking.
6.4.5, striking the clause for any 2-unit or
Oh, yes,
3-unit
yeah,
development.
thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense, Malcolm. I think that's a good edit. How does everybody else feel about that? It just makes it read more clearly.
Well, when I started talking about this, it was to forego site plan review for certain projects. I think that's why this language is in there.
Is it a vestige then of several edits?
So, I
It just,
mean,
it reads awkward, don't you think? It's like 2 separate
it wasn't-
elements in
sure.
one sentence.
Fine, but the bigger point again was to eliminate site plan review for 2 and 3 family developments.
But we,
But then when we constructed this, we constructed it in a way that it would be.
that it would be
global
all
for-
inclusive for
Right.
site
For all-
performance standards, not just for 2 and 3 family development.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in that context, it makes sense to strike the language, right? It would apply to 2 and 3 family developments just by virtue of,
So it'll read, all site development shall meet the following objectives and shall be reviewed at step level for compliance, period.
yeah,
No, but wait a minute, but then if you read the next sentence, wouldn't it imply that if any project meets these criteria, then they can forego site plan review unless they have something that's conflicting with these design criteria?
No.
Why not?
Because all of the entries in the bylaw that say site plan review required still apply.
Still.
So then site plan review would be required for 3-unit development.
No, because we've taken it out.
We're proposing to remove it.
We're
in section-
removing
Proposing to-
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we're removing it from the section of 2 and 3 unit.
Right,
We're making these two change. That's a,
So
we're,
the 2 and 3 units will be by right. We won't change it.
I appreciated Carol's statement because it does frame that a lot of these are interrelated and we're probably gonna wanna communicate it in that way. And I think we'll have a next meeting, we can talk about strategy there, but I think that is, we do see the interrelatedness of these. So if you wanna keep thinking on it, it's fine. We don't have to vote on it at the moment. Do you wanna pass over to the next one?
Yeah.
Let's take up the, let's, I don't mind, but let's take up the item of the lighting. For the good comments from Jackie on lighting, so. Do we want to provide for a height restriction on like on light mount? I'm losing my ability to speak on the mounting height of lights.
There's the pole height requirement there's one in for the nursing home conversions, there's one in section.
You said
8.10.24.
15 feet,
Pardon me?
is it 15 feet?
14.
14 feet?
8.10.4, that's the nursing home conversion. The only other place pole height appears is in 7.9.5. High impact commercial uses, lighting of parking areas. The bottom of the light source on a pole should be no higher than 17 feet above finished grade.
Yeah,
25? 17 and 25.
Finished grade.
Where do we say that there can't be any leakage over property on foot candles?
I believe that is in here in 7.9.5.
The sixth. Light
It seems
fixtures
like
shall
it
be
should be-
located
That's
or
only for
shielded so that illumination onto any adjacent property is no greater than a foot candle.
Yeah, item 6, 7.9.5, item 6, light fixtures shall be located and or shielded, so illumination under any existing property is no greater.
Maybe we should yank that. out.
Shouldn't that be part of this though?
That should be put in here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What about the height? Isn't 25 feet?
It's pretty high.
Yeah. and we
It's high.
keep
And
bringing it
17
down.
and 17 in the setback.
So if we were going to, I can see the rationale for having it for the larger parking lots to have a higher light.
Is it better to have higher light or more light? More light that's less.
Depends on who you
noise.
ask.
I'm asking the board.
There are pros and cons. 14 feet is pretty reasonable for like general
small projects.
commercial.
Small project.
Any place where you don't have tractor trailers going.
Yeah.
It's pretty reasonable. So I would say if we were gonna add to our performance standards that 14 feet would be reasonable.
Don't quote me on this, but I think the co-op lights in the parking lot are 20 feet, and that's the maximum you're allowed at the redevelopment of the BCC building across the street. There's a 20-foot max pole mounted lights, fully shielded, downcast.
But I
In
know,
my humble opinion, I think 20 footers were fairly low.
And there's no updating this, right? The high impact section.
Not this round.
We can't, no.
No.
Well, you could put it in the lighting standards, so.
And we have conflicting regs for a year.
Yeah. But what about it seems like this is where we should say something about foot candles on the property line.
Yeah, I mean,
Many places say 0 foot candles.
I understand.
I mean,
Yeah.
but we can add the height and the foot candle here and add a note to the law that says, you know, unless otherwise stated in the bylaw, right? And then next year we can clean up this high impact development section.
All right, so Chris makes a point that in terms of consistency, we've been using 20 feet for commercial.
So can we add a 4 and a 5 here then?
You want a
Sure.
4 to be height
height.
of fixture?
And the 5 should be that number 6 from from 7.9.5. Which says light fixture should be located where shielded so illumination in the adjacent property is no greater than 1 foot candle.
Yeah, I'd honestly suggest making it less
make it
than
0.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's making it
If
what?
that's
Point
practical.
0.1 is pretty standard in the industry.
0.1.
Yeah, I mean, it's about light spillage onto a property, right? So why should you, 1 foot candle is actually quite bright.
Yeah.
It's most parking lots are average 1 foot candle.
Yeah, and we only allow 0.6 to 2.4, so.
But this is off the property.
Yeah.
Off the property, 0 is not unreasonable. 0.1 would be a compromise if you ask me. 0.1.
Okay,
So why don't we add it?
so that'll be number 5.
Are you contemporaneously editing this?
I'm not sure where you're going yet, but if you want to tell me what number 4 is, I'll
4
write it
is
So,
height.
6.4.6 lighting.
on there.
We have 3, so number 4 would be the height. Did you have language for that?
Looking
No,
for
good.
it. Where was the language in the?
It's up on screen now if you want to see it. The plain text language is from 7.9.
Oh, okay,
This is from 7.9.
okay. So on the bottom of the light source of the pole light shall be no higher than 20 feet above finished grade.
And what's your fifth?
And then the lighting levels.
Yeah,
Copy
Oh,
6.
it copies
so number
6.
6 there, except make it 0.1.
Zero point one, just reverse those two numbers.
Yeah, hit the reverse key.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Should that still be plural?
0.1 foot candles. I think so. A 10 foot of a candle.
Said if you can raise your hand. That should be a handle.
Right,
I
okay,
think we're less than 1. It should probably be singular.
okay, so,
So didn't John have a question when we first looked at these and sent them to the select board about cut and fill or something? And the existing, the number 1, existing grade question?
do you have a question or comment about cut and fill, Jonathan?
Yeah, I had a lot of questions about that. Now that you reminded me.
Could you just put that up for one more time, so I can finish?
Which on the left?
The last one was it?
Right.
Yeah, 6.4.6.
Yeah, thank you.
I think what I pointed out was that this would preclude building Barrington Brook.
No, I just mean the site plan.
Yeah.
Just says any, you can deviate from it, but it has to go through a site plan.
But Randy, there's no
Any-
need to say anything about dark skies. I mean, that we don't have
do we
to, I'm
want
just,
Well, I looked up dark skies and we looked at bylaws and they include the whole word, but
in that language.
it's really full cover. That's really. pretty
Okay, so we're actually getting it without naming it.
Yeah. Okay, have you given thought or do you want me to continue?
I'm gonna take one.
About what?
About the 6.4.5 site design?
I mean, I guess what I'm not getting is if we don't pass the other section, then what will happen to this?
For fail twice?
No, it's still a
And
site.
the answer is nothing, right? Because
Also.
Too much?
all development would have to succumb to this, and it's in the other section that it's exempted, that the 3 unit is
Mhm.
exempted.
Right.
Does that seem okay?
Yeah,
A
so
little bit, you have to trace it out, but. Okay. So, if we're satisfied with that drafty language and Chris has captured the changes, do we have a motion to, recommend this amendment to the
I agree.
annual town meeting.
I think this is a big one.
Mhm.
So is there anything else that you guys see to add to this?
If anyone has any inspirations, we'll have to amend
Would
it
I-
at town meeting.
When I constructed it, I looked at other people's design standards, I don't remember whose, and then I went through our site plan review to try to cover all the things that we normally cover.
You know, I don't know if this is perfect, but it's pretty good, and I think we should let it go, and if we need to alter it later, we'll beef it up, we can do it.
Okay,
These are,
And if it
these
gets
are,
passed by town meeting, it'd be perfect.
these are things that the board talks about almost every time you review a
Yeah.
project.
Yeah,
Why not just make them standards?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
no, it's true, streamline.
So I'll move to recommend this to town meeting, send it to the select board for recommendation to town meeting, to town warrant.
No,
Yeah.
we've already done
We've
that.
already referred it to its select board, so this is to recommend the amendment go to the annual town meeting.
Okay, then I recommend it.
And be passed, or. Yeah.
Do we need to make a
It's
positive
going to
recommendation?
town meeting.
Yeah.
You-
We
No.
will give it a pause.
Sending a positive recommendation
Correct.
to town meeting.
Yeah, positive or negative recommendation.
So it's already accepted on the warrant?
But he
Is that
says
it?
Has to- Has to be by law, it's been submitted properly.
Okay, so.
We
Kim,
can
did
change
you
it.
get that? We've got a positive
I
recommendation,
have a motion.
and we have a second. Okay, Malcolm seconds.
To send a positive recommendation to town meeting on this article.
Yes.
That's a first.
Okay.
correct.
Do we have any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3, amending section 3.1.4 table of uses to permit 3-unit residential development by right. We're gonna reserve your comment about for an 8-family in the R4.
Mhm.
And we'll put an asterisk on that and come back to it for June,
Mhm.
yes? August, July, August, September.
When you're back from vacation.
So any comments or questions about this one? We didn't have any public comments or questions. No. Okay, so do we have a motion to send a positive recommendation to town meeting for this amendment?
So moved.
Thank you, Malcolm. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 4 is amending regulations sections 8.1.2 and 8.1.1. Yeah, well, it's been a long day. 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3 governing 2 and 3 accessory and multi-unit dwellings. Text changes that correspond to the aforementioned amendment. Let's see, we did not have any comments on this one either.
So as Brandy said, this will make the text mirror the use table that you talked about in the previous article. So 2 and 3 family come together in the regs, site plan review is eliminated from 2 and 3 family and from the ADUs.
Thank you. And we'll have to make that point. Maybe we loop those two together as one. So do we have a motion for a positive recommendation on this item to town meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Dana.
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. You guys are in lockstep tonight. Okay, let's get into the trees. Number 5, amending section 6.2.7 regarding trees on Route 7. So comments I made note of were Julia's comments about trying to keep the 25-foot and work with the tree committee for some alternative. I had a suggestion about inclusionary trees with fees in lieu of trees, the tree fee.
And was it Malcolm who said there should be a way to
I think we should, I don't think we're gonna pass 50 feet.
waive it?
It was impassioned play. I think it was a good argument, and I think it would be hard to,
You don't think people will vote for this?
Yeah. but I think if we leave it at 25 feet and then make it easier to deviate from the 25 feet when we run into some of the oddball things that we run into, I think that would achieve our goals.
I Personally, I like the fee in lieu of. I deal with that a lot with site development work, fees in lieu of if you can't meet something. And to hear that the DPW's got a fund for maintenance and removal, but no restoration. And I know, like, think of those ash trees on Stockbridge Road that, you know, got emerald ash borer and they cut them down. And now we just have this great big bare strip where those 2 or 3 big trees came out. So
The fee in lieu of would be how much and, you know,
Where?
where would they be planted, when?
Yeah.
Or just, there's none of that, you know.
no, I think that does matter. And I would say that the tree committee would need to work. I mean, I'm not sure what our process is for annual updates on fees, but they'd need to make a recommendation for what the cost and care of a tree is for a year and to develop a fee for that.
Or can we ask them to plant a tree in a spot, in conjunction with the tree committee? In lieu of the 20.
If they're working on a plan and there are, you know, blank spots available, you know, I don't know I want to think of it in terms of how much do you want to bind the applicant to some responsibility for trees through their site plan process, right? I think it gets harder to enforce it if we like say, oh yeah, and as part of this requirement, you've got to go work with, who's gonna enforce that? I feel like that's kind of what we've got now. We plant those trees and you see them sitting out there in the right of way and nobody waters them and they're dead in 6 months, so.
What about
I'd rather
putting,
empower the tree committee
Yeah.
to like care for it
To-
by funding
or to
them.
monitor it?
Well, I think we
Yeah.
could do that
Can we
separately,
get
but
the
just
money?
in,
Yeah, but what do you think we can do for this bylaw? I mean, if we're gonna impose it, if we're gonna recommend a fee in lieu of the tree,
Mhm.
what's the fee?
Said fee will be established on an annual basis by the tree committee.
Well, the
Just pick a number,
fails to
$250.
continue to exist for some reason. I mean, you're sort of putting the responsibility on.
Yeah, it's our
that you have
responsibility.
no,
How about shall pay $1,500 if they can't plant a tree on the property?
Is that a reasonable amount? I
Yeah,
have no idea.
it
You
is.
could plant a shitload of trees.
No, you really can't. No, not properly. That's, you can plant a shitload of trees poorly. Yes, but not properly. You know, a properly planted tree is put in a prepared hole. It's of a certain caliper, 2-3 inches caliper. It's staked, it's watered for several months. I mean, there's
I've planted a lot of them at Malcolm's.
Yeah, we plant more. I mean, and it's $1,000, I mean, just for us, and then, plant a tree now and,
so $1,000. I mean, like,
Yeah.
pick a note, $500 then if we think it's too much.
I mean,
It's the tree
especially
tax.
to take into account all the care that it requires afterwards and.
Well, it needs a year to get
Yeah.
established, so it does need care, and that's the piece we don't have right
Yeah.
now.
So we're writing writing language for.
Well, we can write the language for it, we're trying to figure out what the concept is.
For me, it's a concept, I'm throwing it out to you guys, I think it's not
No, I
unreasonable.
think it's all a bad idea.
I can speak to the issue. So what I'm hearing is that we have an enforcement problem, we have a maintenance problem. We also have obviously a bylaw issue among this board enforcing it, or at least applying the bylaw
Or
to
something
further developments. And I'm hearing also, when I hear fees on developments, I always get a little nervous because, development to begin with is already really expensive. I don't see an issue giving responsibility to another committee that already exists in the town, especially one that's guided by and who has an ex officio, who is a part of that committee, the tree warden. I'd like what Malcolm is saying to make it easier to deviate from what we currently have. I think what I'm thinking is my preference would be to eliminate there. I don't know if you need a special permit to deviate from the law.
No, we
So
want
maybe-
site plan.
Right, so maybe we eliminate that, and then maybe we can work with, the town, the tree committee, and this committee to develop maybe some type of fee structure that is paid by the developer at the time of application. It's a, 0.5% of the total cost of the project, half percent of the total cost of the thing. And then that goes into a fund because it's obvious that the tree committee needs a fund because they don't have, or at least the tree warden needs a fund to plant trees. And the revenue can be generated from that. We take the onus of taking care of these trees, replanting the trees, maintaining the trees off of the property owner. And we give it to the official in town who's responsible for doing it. I think that would ensure that we have a healthy tree. We'll have funds for it. It's just gonna take a little bit more work. So what I would propose is that we eliminate the special permit requirement to deviate from this section of the bylaw and that we, work with these committees to develop this other scheme.
I want to just point of order with Chris, given that that's a separate section. Is that something we can bring forward?
No, I don't want to bring that forward now. I just would like to change this so that we can deviate from the bylaw without a special permit. I think we can do that. And then for next year or whenever, I don't even know if we don't need it. Maybe we don't need to go to town meeting to instill this responsibility and this
What
fee
section
structure.
of the bylaw are you referring to?
628. special
Yeah,
permit.
so 627 is what we have put up as a draft article.
When I brought this up last week, I was told that we could discuss it during the public.
So we are discussing it. Yeah, I just don't, I'm asking our
Right, our expert.
our expert if it is something that we can,
We can add to it to 627.
it'd be modification of 627 and 628.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hesitate to. The public hearing, was discussing 6.2.7 specifically. So I hesitate to say that you have that beyond that. Whatever you want to do within 6.2.7, I think you could.
That is not what I was told.
Okay.
I think-
I apologize.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's okay. If we can't do it, we can't do it.
I don't know. I mean, you could propose it, we can check with council. I could come back to you next week and say, council says yeah, or no, that's way beyond the scope.
Well, I would suggest we vote and pass at 6.2.8.
Yeah,
And then if it gets rejected, it gets rejected. And we'll just leave it
Oh, I see what you're
6.2.7,
saying.
6.2.8 as it is for now.
well, I guess I don't have a problem moving that forward, just as long as we all recognize it might not make it onto the
Okay.
warrant. Is that fair to
Yeah.
everybody? Okay,
So,
so, I guess, Chris, do you have?
So we're going down to 25 instead of 50.
No, we're moving to an entirely
Well-
separate section.
there's a few.
Two different
Let's
things.
take one thing at a time. 25 to 50, is everybody okay with that?
I would leave it at 24.
Leaving it at 25.
That's what I suggest.
And provide a way around it.
And provide some way to deviate where it's impractical.
And then site plan review.
Yeah, that's fine.
allow deviation.
I don't have a problem with
Okay,
And the deviation might be, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
The deviation might be, you can give us money instead, or the deviation might be, you can plant a tree somewhere else instead,
Right, we can negotiate.
or is it all of them?
Yeah, if it's.
I think it'll be-
well, I think
I know we can
Chris is
negotiate. but we
making
need
the
right
point
thing.
that we need to be clear about which scenario is a fee, which is a no.
At this point, we're not being clear. We don't have to.
If it becomes a,
We can
Yes,
negotiate.
he knows, he's
I'm
pointing that out.
but if it becomes if it's a planning board rule to refer it to the tree committee, for instance, then we can do that in our meeting, right? We don't need town meeting to do
It
that.
can just be a procedural.
Okay, hold on here.
Listen, with the special permit, we can't add the things that you just mentioned. We can't add a fee. We can't do all these other things.
Yeah.
We can maybe, because we can just deviate from it. So why wouldn't we just take the word special permit out of 6.2.8 and then go with that? So it just states the planning board can deviate from this.
Because practically, I mean, that's an interesting solution, but it seems like practically speaking, if we added that language to 6.2.8, then we'd have immediate conflict in in 6.2.7, we'd have immediate conflict in.
No, I don't want to do
6.2.8.
it. I want to change it in 6.2.8. That's what we're doing.
We're on the same page. Yeah.
628 applies to.
So we're not making,
Yeah.
Not just.
What's the problem?
I have to be honest, I don't love it when we like add new sections,
I
without
don't
like.
understand the problem. If somebody could do it by special permit, why wouldn't? If they
Hold
can
on.
deviate by special permit, what we're talking about here is making it easier for them to deviate from this. Why wouldn't we do it without a special permit? They're coming before us for site plan review anyway. We can say, no, you can't deviate from this stuff.
No, the point is not. The point is that we need to look at what, to Malcolm's comment earlier about unintended consequences, we don't want to just like modify 6.2.8 without looking at the rest of the relevant.
But what I'm saying is that the deviation is not that you can forego anything. The deviation will be determined at whatever site plan review meeting they're asking for deviation. So it's, I don't see a risk here.
I don't see a risk either. If what we did is, as Pedro suggested, take away that clause by special permit pursuant to section 10.4. Then we end that paragraph after section 6.2 and get off all the special permit language out of it. Then it reads, here's what the requirement is, but the planning board may deviate.
It's not like we're required to deviate. We can if we
They may
want.
authorize deviation.
For all our talk about like certainty and consistency, that seems to sort of fly in the face.
Well, it's realistic in relation to what we've encountered in, across Stockbridge Road from, the marijuana shop where there was no spot for.
I think it's
They had
actually,
all that
But-
frontage, and
More
no-
effective.
no place for
The
trees.
deviation,
I think it's actually more effective
the
than
deviation,
changing it to 50 feet.
But I don't, but
I really don't want to be here until 10 o'clock, okay? It's been a very long day. Can we just like one at a time talk and get through this?
I was just.
I really,
I was
really
gonna
would
say
like
that
to move this along.
6.2.8 is not in what was published.
Yeah,
And so I think Chris's point is that you can't.
Chris's point,
You
well,
can't modify it.
but we suggested we would,
You can modify it on the town meeting floor.
we would pass it on, and then if it gets rejected by council, then it gets rejected by council.
Or alternatively, you could just add an amendment on the town floor.
And I think the town would be happy.
the deviation
doing
language
something
applies to the whole of Stockbridge Road landscape, or excuse me, Route 7 landscape requirements.
Yes, but again, it's not that we're forced to deviate anything. It's discretionary, just like the special permit, it's discretionary. Just because they file for a special permit doesn't mean we have to grant the deviation.
So there needs to be rules. There must be rules for the deviation. Otherwise.
It's arbitrary.
You'll see this
But
or.
but we have rules.
Unless there has to be a rule of some sort, either it's a special permit process with specific criteria, or.
But
I would say that
or-
the,
Everybody needs to let one person talk in time.
sorry,
It's either a special permit process with, and there's criteria and section 10.4, or it's some other process that you set forth here. It may be, I don't know if this would be permitted, it may be, the planning board in its rules and regulations may set forth the criteria from which it can waive these criteria, something like that. There has to be some.
there has to be.
Or somebody with the
totally
authority
disagree.
has
We're already
the
under,
ability to waive criteria if certain.
we are already under a process. The process is the site plan review. That's the process.
Well,
Why
could
we
say
want to
that
add
through-
more process?
Can we say that by the planning board through site plan review and then deviate?
No, they're coming before us for site plan review. This is what, we don't have to review this unless somebody's coming before us.
Chris has told us what the rules are, so.
I think you're making a suggestion, and then what I'm suggesting is why do we want to throw more regulations into it when we don't have to? We're already under a process.
I mean, I think the bigger issue is that if we can just deviate whenever we want, why are we even creating any kind of framework for rules? Like, then it becomes completely arbitrary. And that's why I made the comment about, we talk about certainty and taking away that arbitrariness by having design standards. Now, if we're just gonna like deviate willy-nilly whenever you want,
So I would.
we would, I agree with Chris, we need like criteria for deviation,
I
like,
originally suggested a clause that says, if the planning board finds that adherence to the requirements are impractical. So would that be,
Okay, tell me more.
so 6.2.8 would say the planning board may grant deviation from the requirements in section 6.2. If they find that adherence to the requirement is impractical.
I think you'd have to define impractical in terms of, you know, no existing green space in the frontage, or we've got to like bind it by something. So think of the one we looked at down, well, use the bridge one, right?
Overhead wire.
That's overhead wires does not make trees planting impractical. The frontage down by the bridge site is all head-in parking, right? The whole thing is paved.
Yeah,
Is that impractical? Like, is that the example that,
that would be an example of impractical. The one
no,
across,
you don't think so?
No, I just don't know why we have to add more. We're not forced to deviate.
But if you are going to deviate, you want to have a guide for why you are
Which we
deviating.
do. It's called site plan review. We're in it. We're in site plan review.
but the site plan review has no criteria for tree planting.
It has criteria for trees.
Yeah.
It's
does.
for removal of
Taking
trees
down
6
trees.
inches or larger, not landscaping. I mean, if we're focusing on the intent of these requirements, the intent is in support of what the tree committee wants. They want to establish a canopy that can overhang the road, which is attractive and calms traffic and provides a lot of human and environmental benefits. So, you know, that's why we've got the Route 7 landscape requirements above and beyond the regular site plan requirements, right?
But what's the fear that we're gonna have another body here is gonna be like against trees who will just allow any deviation at random?
I think where I'm coming from right now is I don't think that we can amend 6.2.8. I think that we have a procedural snafu there. Two, if we are going to amend it, I'm not worried so much about the special permit piece. It's just if we're gonna deviate, there should be some sort of guide rails for why you would deviate. And it shouldn't be arbitrary. I think it should be spelled out and it should be based on a hardship situation.
Okay, I mean, we have a bylaw situation here.
Okay.
No, can I finish my thought here? We have a bylaw situation where we are proposing to change 25 to 50. I don't think that's gonna fly. But I think our objectives can be met if we come up with some language with 6.2.8, which makes deviation easier. It doesn't require a special permit. So can we come up with some language to do that? If not, I think we should drop the whole thing.
I agree with Malcolm about passing this over, but I'd like to make another point that when somebody applies for a special permit, there's no criteria in the special permit that refers to tree planting.
Unless they're in these zones and then they've got to go to Route 7 landscape requirements, right? They're in the Route 7 area.
No,
And they're getting
but the criteria for a special permit is always the same. Is there a different criteria for planting trees?
There's not.
No.
Okay, so that's my point, is that the site plan review doesn't have anything for planting, neither is the special permit, which is what they have to come before us now. So my point is that it is completely arbitrary, as it is now with a special permit. There's no criteria. I make a motion to pass this over and discuss it for maybe next year.
I'll second that.
Can we do that?
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
No.
It's our recommendation to town meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, so it would be on the
So,
warrant.
yeah, I thought it was
It'll
gonna
be
be.
on the warrant, we'll just say.
So we recommend that this be passed. over.
I think we're missing an opportunity to like help fund an initiative.
She doesn't want us to change it.
I think that is more complicated.
Yeah, it's much more complicated.
I agree with you.
I'll check if the motion passes, to pass over, I'll check to see if it's even, you know, maybe move to put it on the warrant at all. So I'll just check it, you know. If you don't want it on the warrant, say that. If you would rather it be on.
What's your
the
motion?
Town meeting pass over.
Is it a negative recommendation to not recommend the amendment?
Okay, I'll make a motion I want to make a motion to pass over the amendment. I don't think it's a negative.
You want to even, You want to put it on the warrant at all? Because
No, I don't.
it's possible that I could be right. It may be
That's
possible
fine.
just
I'll speak to it at town meeting if I.
I actually like the idea of putting it on the warrant and then saying we want to pass over because that shows that the planning board actually responded to public comment.
And here's, if we put it on the warrant. And if between now and May, we find out that actually we could have modified 6.2.8, then we could always do that on the floor of the town meeting.
You can offer an amendment.
You can.
You can do that either way. All right, I'll withdraw my
You don't have to
motion.
make a decision
No, I think
tonight.
it's
I could go talk to town council and decide next meeting.
I don't know what it is.
So, yeah, I don't know what we're doing. Are we
have a
making a
motion?
motion to recommend, not recommend, or not even put it on the warrant? So those are your three options.
Or to talk about it next week or 2 weeks.
Well,
I withdrew my motion.
Oh,
So there's
okay.
nothing on the floor.
So we have nothing on the floor. Okay,
And Jonathan, are you withdrawing your second? Did you second it?
yeah,
Gladly.
sorry.
why are you withdrawing this?
We'll discuss it
We'll,
next week.
we'll move on. We'll
We're
move
just not gonna vote,
to-
we're not gonna vote on it
We're not
tonight.
gonna
Don't we have to vote on
He's going to talk to town council about whether we can modify 6.2.
it? Oh, could we continue the public hearing? Is that?
No, there's.
Close.
You don't have, the planning board is not required to vote on this.
Oh. Oh, I thought that was required as part of the public hearing.
The public hearing has been closed.
We do need to vote at some point. We could extend the time. Yeah, we were trying to work through this tonight.
But
I
there's
just
no
said-
timeline. when it agrees to it.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I got, I'm caught up.
All right, so Article 5 we'll talk about at the next meeting. See what. It'll be done.
All right, Article 6. Amending section 3.1.4 table of use regulations to allow multi-unit residential and mixed-use development by right in the B2. And to require such development to include affordable housing. Seemed like the principal comment we received was about leaving the zoning district for 9 or more units, as an SB with the footnote saying you can have no, special permit if you can do it by right as if you include affordable housing, right? Is that what we decided? We flipped it around a little bit.
Yeah, so you put in,
To
requires a
incentivize.
special permit, and then the footnote says that if you include,
Affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes
okay.
sense.
I like that change. Does everybody else like that change?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're agreed on that one. The
But I
second
also-
piece was the 4 stories, 40 feet. Yes.
And I'd like to see the same thing there.
The same footnote.
Well,
Is
it's
it
a
an
different
or an
table.
and?
It's a different table.
It's a different table. Oh, dimension. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Mentioning.
So. the
Is it,
dimension-
is it an and? Or is it an or? I guess,
Um,
let's see. Yeah, when does it apply, Pedro? Or, that's what I'm trying to get at.
It applies under the same circumstances.
Only if-
Only
if you're doing the affordable?
Yeah.
You know,
so the same language, if X percent affordable.
if I could just say something, when I did the little zoning diagrams for you guys the other day, I came to the conclusion that there's plenty of development available on these lots. I don't know that we need to give a density bonus. You can build so much on these lots. It's 75% coverage. I don't know that we need it.
The extra.
The extra story.
I don't think we need it.
Well, it'd be easier to pass without it. Is that?
I really don't think we need it. There's so much you can, like I said, I mean,
Does the board want to strike that?
Well, I mean, the difference is really stories, right? It's not a change in height,
Yeah.
so I don't know that, like.
I know my wife's been driving through town looking at all the 4-story buildings we don't have,
Mhm.
and they want them now.
Well, and Pedro, I mean, and Jonathan, is 40 for 4 stories even
no,
realistic?
it's not.
Yeah, so should we strike this?
Well,
as-
Remember that height goes to the midpoint of the gable.
True.
Yeah, so now you're determining, aesthetics.
No, I'm not. I'm
Yes,
just-
you are.
I'm just pointing out how we measure height.
No, I honestly think that there's enough development available in B2 that we don't need a density bonus there. That was my conclusion after looking at those 3 lots. I looked at a small lot, medium lot, and a large lot.
So we'll strike and amend the table of dimension.
Whatever happened to the childcare center incentive? I remember reading a long time ago. Is that somewhere around?
That was, part of a larger amendment we were discussing,
Yeah.
a larger incentive zone.
I remember the early
And
days.
this B2, was something I thought the board could pursue in the meantime. That would at least try to accomplish the by right if there's affordable housing.
It's like a half step.
It's a half step.
It's, and the incentivizing is the whole point here. It's like, how do we incentivize? And we talk about density bonuses and this and the other thing.
Yeah, you
And I
get an
think
extra
this was the-
story if you do a childcare center. That's what I remember, and I thought that was pretty bright.
It's, Brandy and I have been chatting a little about it, and it's a little complicated. And I think we can continue the conversation, no question.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to it.
But in the end, though, there's so much development opportunity on North Main, South Main, all over town, that I don't think we need density bonuses for that. But we could, discuss if you put a childcare facility,
There's some others.
you can forego a special permit or site plan or something else
You
like
get
that.
the plan.
We're not talking about trees, no more tree talk.
So-
Okay, so do you have a clarity here up here? Yes.
So I struck the bit about the stores,
Yeah, that's fine.
and the use table is special permit with a footnote that says. In any development containing 9 or more residential units, at least 10% of those units are dedicated. And this footnote applies to. Use table parentheses 3 and parentheses 7.
Yeah. For mixed use and
For mixed use and.
multifamily.
Unit portable to. Household.
That looks fine to me. Everybody in agreement there? Yes, we like it.
I don't know, households sounding a lot like family to me.
Careful. All right.
Unit earnings. No. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion to send a positive recommendation on this amendment as amended?
So move.
Thank you.
Second,
Second by Jonathan and a motion by Pedro. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. Number 7, amending the zoning map on Silver Street to change the zoning of certain parcels from R2 to R1A. I didn't really get any questions on this one, more just like inquiries about how it would change development potential, right?
Pedro brought up the point that. In our 2 zones, there's a possibility for
OSRD.
the open space residential development, which could allow clustered. Housing, does an OSRD allow how many units? Is it single or 2-family?
Can I do 2 minutes?
So, I mean, I don't know how this. An OSRD is by special permit. How much would be developable here, who knows?
Well, the ponds and the pond, in the area between them, that's open space.
What?
No, it's open space.
Does that count for developable area?
Well, it doesn't at first.
The permutations here are endless, but Pedro's point is well taken, that in fact the R2 allows. Possibility of special permit for intense development. The R1A, as proposed, allows for a couple more lots.
And the R1A also allows for more different types of commercial, I mean, the R2 allows for more different types of commercial developments that aren't allowed in R1A.
So,
Such as, Malcolm?
Let's see, I had it.
Marijuana cultivation. but-
Yeah, marijuana cultivation is one. No, but there's a lot of things by right, commercially in the RS2. Retail up to 20,000 square feet can be in the R2.
In the
but
R2,
not in the
really?
R1A.
Really? R2?
The riding stables, ski tow, summer camps.
Well, riding stables, you need.
Yeah, actually would be a good thing for that spot.
I think,
I
don't
agree.
think-
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can I make a point?
Yeah.
What is,
Time out. Malcolm, I think there's just an error in that retail 20,000 square feet in the R2. That's not permitted.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
I thought so.
Are you looking at B2?
No, it's an N.
R2,
R2, it's an N.
third column.
It's an N.
Okay, but there are,
And we know.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pedro, but that was an important fact.
Less than 20,000.
Professional offices. There's no retail.
Well, this is what he's referring to.
Right.
okay, sorry about that. But there are a number of things, golf and country clubs, hospitals.
It could be considered an existing market.
can I ask one
Well, I
question?
think
Yes.
if you're gonna try and sell it, then Pedro's point is, saying, or Chris's point, that you could potentially, it's much more developable at a bigger scale in R2 than what we're proposing.
What point did you want to make?
I just wanted to state the purpose clearly why this is advantageous to R1A and whether or not changing it to R1A is actually doing the purpose, fulfilling the purpose.
When I brought it up, I thought that by right development of smaller lots where there's water and sewer, similar to what already exists in that area, would not be inappropriate.
Yeah.
And
So,
that's why I brought it forward.
and I
But
like
we're
your,
talking about a
It would allow
difference.
several more lots
And,
by right.
and there are no NIMBYs in the cemetery.
When I do the calculations on my own, I'm looking at 5 lots in R1A, 3 lots R2.
Okay.
Whatever.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
That's the point. And we're changing it to R1A. It's not that big of a difference, but we are also taking a different type of development potential away from the area, from those lots.
so strategically, I like Chris's suggestion to make a simpler form of development a little bit more advantageous, because we know we get A&Rs here, right, pretty regularly. And that may not give us the highest density, but it may give us more diversity. And
More new housing.
How would it?
And it's
give us
more
diversity?
consistent
I
with
don't
what's already
understand.
there.
it would be more consistent, so I mean, to the
So
public
that's not
comment.
diversity, let's be clear about that. That would give us more single family, 2 family.
So to some of the public comment points about apartment complexes. There may be a desire to create more single-family lots
That are affordable.
that could be built out instead of an apartment complex at that location.
I don't know that you can do an apartment complex at that location.
Multifamily, no?
9 or more units, no, either R2 or R1A. I'm looking at the right one this time. They can do 3 to 8.
It's
4 to 8.
it's not a dramatic thing.
It's not.
If the board,
I just, from my point of view, I don't really see the point or what we're trying to do. I mean, I can go, I have no vote on this one. I can go either way. Whatever the town decides is fine with me.
Well, I think it brings this plot of land into the town more. It already has town water and sewer, and it's sitting out there. We considered at one point for whether it would be one of the smart growth zones. Where they
Now,
could-
yeah, I mean, if we're talking about MXD, that's a whole different situation. That's not what we're talking
I
about.
think we're talking
And
about this.
again, I mean, I think it's kind of you're making an argument, 2 lots as opposed to 3 lots, or 5 lots as opposed to 3 lots, is not really a huge thing.
There's
I bet
there's
you
not a
would-
huge, there's not a huge gain of units, of lots, of development potential. There isn't. It may not be something that you want to move forward with. That's
So
fine.
here's something I don't know about. When rezonings like this happen. I mean, I know that when, my experience in the city, for example, when you rezone something that only allowed, 3 stories to something that allowed 15 stories, boom, then things happen. Lots get subdivided, real estate just gets moving and the whole. By doing this, is there gonna be really that much more incentive for somebody to buy the lot and then split it up into 5 units as opposed to what they can do now? Which is to split it up into 3 units.
I don't know the answer to
I know,
that. I don't
but-
think it's such a large increase in potential that there's a massive incentive there. I don't think there's a huge value increase.
I just think that property belongs in the R1A. If it's gonna be developed, I think it should be developed in the style of the R1A, not the R2.
So you'd like to take away the potential for the open space and recreation.
Why don't we do
I
this? Why don't we not decide tonight? Since we already have another one we're not deciding on tonight. And we did bring this into the fold fairly quickly. So if you wanna deliberate on it or think on it a little bit.
I can't vote, but I'd like to support your recommendation.
In the interest of thinking about it.
Again, I'm ready to move on it. I don't really,
How about you, Jonathan?
doesn't,
Feel like you need to give it more thought? I mean, I haven't done enough to vet if the OSRD is really a valid approach. And so I think,
given the ponds and everything, it's probably not,
Yeah,
it's not a likely scenario.
in which case it would be then advantageous to do the R1A because you would potentially get more lots. It's marginally more.
yeah.
And I mean, if we use our 3-unit development by right, 5 lots could be 15 and 9 versus 15 is a big difference. Right? And sewer and water walkable into the Big Y and into town. Do we
Yeah.
want to think about it or do we want to make a recommendation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't think we have an agreement on it, so.
no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just bringing up, I wanna
Jonathan
understand
sounds
it
to me
more.
like he's for it. I'm for going for the R1A. Pedro's ambivalent and I'm
No, I'm
not sure
for it.
you're for it. Okay, well then let's make a motion to send a positive recommendation.
So
Thank you, Malcolm.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Want any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, the last one is the wireless telecommunications facilities, which needs a different acronym. And
That's safe.
no, the acronym was WTF.
WTF.
Oh.
We're gonna get shut down by the FCC. I don't feel like I have enough information to make any kind of recommendation. Can we?
I can agree with that.
I can agree with that.
So
too.
what can you do?
Yeah, what's our procedural move here, Chris? Is it?
We could
Insufficient
send it to town
information?
meeting without a
No
recommendation.
recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Um,
that would be your report.
so do we have a motion to make no recommendation on this? I'd like to say in the absence of any sort of education or communication from the petitioner.
So moved.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Hope somebody shows up at 10.
Wow, good job, guys. We got through all of those. So now we'll move
No, we got
quickly
through almost all.
into,
I'm sorry, I need, who made the recommendation?
it
Uh,
was,
motion.
it was
Jonathan
Jonathan
moved,
and Malcolm seconded. Board and subcommittee updates, issues or concerns? None? Malcolm,
No.
Jackie?
No.
Pedro? No? I don't want to belabor us here, but I do want to raise the issue of the Habitat property.
Mhm.
And whether or not we want to potentially contribute any comment from this board to the select board.
Didn't we already do that? We sent it to them?
We sent a recommendation, but I did have a conversation with Steve, and he said he would have welcomed a little bit more information about some of the rationale around our recommendation, particularly given the change from 20 to 30 units and what our thoughts were there. And I think I was not fully apprised of some of the either commitment or expectation that there was a commitment to the local community, that there would only be 20 units. And so going from 20 to 30 for some of the neighborhood feels like a very big step up. And so, you know, is there a possibility for potentially phasing in the additional 10 units? You know, like reserve some space where more units could be added. I know,
Well, they were doing that,
They're gonna phase
they were gonna phase it anyway.
I think there wasn't a lot of clarity in the communication on that, although I wasn't there, because you may have been there. Do you know if phasing was
Well,
discussed?
they said they were to us. they said
Yeah.
they were-
Yeah, I mean, my initial
They
reaction was,
can't build 30 units right away.
my initial reaction was just that, you know, we need housing, so of course we need more housing, but I wasn't appreciating the fact that the neighborhood had a sense that they had a commitment from
Well,
the developer, but we don't want to see a lost opportunity, right?
right, I mean, we want more housing, and that's what we, as a planning board, I mean, of course, as long as I've been on the planning board, you know, every year, I mean, we're focused on housing. I wasn't party, and I don't think any of us were party to the agreement that was made with the residents between the Affordable Housing Trust and residents as far as the number of units.
Yeah, no,
But there were people here who were party to that, who didn't speak up too, and I don't feel blame.
no, I
feel
don't think there's
guilty
blame
for
to be
what
had.
we did
no.
in terms of that. So, are you suggesting that we might want to revisit that, our recommendation and
No.
have another?
I don't think she is.
Meetings?
I think she's saying that.
I'm saying
Go to the select board.
supplemental communication.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any more public comment. Is that correct, Chris?
No, they haven't closed the
No,
public hearing.
that's-
Public hearing is not closed.
The public hearing is not
Yeah, I was
closed?
3 weeks or something.
Okay,
That was the airport.
so the question then is, does this board want to submit something with supplemental comments around rationale supporting 30 or thoughts on,
Or we could just send our chair to the
or you can
meeting.
send the chair. She may have another board meeting that night or someone who pays her.
I'll buy you a drink.
Not quite the same. I can't make a mortgage on that.
It's gotta be less than $50.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's opportunity for communication.
I think the opportunity for communication, the onus on that communication is on Habitat.
And for the housing.
Agreed, and I have put a call in and,
I think they blew it. And
there,
They have to, you know, deal with the consequences. They needed to go back. They're the ones who made. the
Did they
agreement.
not go back? Did they
No,
not have
they
any
have not.
conversation? I mean, Habitat's not talking to anybody right now.
I'm not sure, I can't
Well,
speak for
the
Habitat.
Affordable Housing Trust shares the responsibility.
Well, I don't,
For sure.
the intent of me raising this was not to point fingers at anyone. It's a complicated project and
Now can I ask a question? Is Steve asking for more?
no, I called him directly myself. Just,
But in your conversation, does he want more?
he said he
explanation
would
from us?
welcome communication if there were details we wanted to share. Yeah,
I mean, we can send details that, you know,
well, we could derive something out of our minutes.
or we can just tell them, you know, we need housing. You know, there's economic peril in town. We need more people to live here. We need more people to start jobs here. We need entrepreneurs, and that's the only way to get it is
Wait, you don't want to talk
you
about
can,
Levittown?
you can have, up to, I mean, when I did the numbers, you can have up to 90 units of housing there.
Yeah.
So, and so what we're doing is building, again, a low density neighborhood in the, you know, I can't speak to it because I didn't even vote for it. I didn't even approve the. I mean, what are we gonna say? That's my point. It's like, what are we gonna say? It's,
Well, yeah, what we did is we sent them back to come back with more units.
I-
And they did.
and they did.
Yeah, I told Steve that 30 was our request.
Yeah.
You know, we said you can do more than 20 and our need is so great. I think that the select board obviously looks at these applications with a different eye because they're responding to different
Mhm.
criteria and different pressures than we are.
Well, and
But would it be, let me just to pitch a specific question, would it be constructive if we sent some communications that point out, you know, from a land use standpoint, this parcel is this size, and when you look at the density of development in and around Housatonic, this kind of density is not inconsistent with what is there, and some aerial photos and some communications around
Also, you were,
infrastructure and housing need.
I was looking at the first time that Habitat came and presented to you all. And then I was looking at the minutes for the last meeting and I'm thinking, basically, there's a lot of discussion about infrastructure. And would it work and how would it work? And you drilled down on it in the very first review and you drilled down on it in the second review. And the fact that because a lot of the concerns expressed, apart from why didn't we know it was 30, was concerned about can the size, can that property support the additional 10 houses? But I thought what we had done was really drill down and look at those questions and deal with it. And so and you even mentioned that parcel could handle 90. So the fact that we're looking at the issues and the impact on the community from a structural perspective, that should be, we did due diligence in a way. And I think that's something that should be reminded of.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, that should be the essence of our response. I mean, technically, this is the way we look at it. You know, we weren't party to the agreement as far as the numbers go, and we're saying, what's the best use for this plot of land? And that, you know, and looking at the infrastructure, as Jackie said, I mean, it can support it. That's
Even looking at the cost per unit, because that's a very real thing. I mean, we have a grant to help support some of the infrastructure costs, but if you can get more units, that makes the cost per unit infrastructure decrease, right? So those are all positive things. I don't know, I would be willing to take a stab at putting some sort of communication together. I may do it just myself if this group doesn't want to do it, and I'll do it as an individual who's got, you know, land development experience, but I just wanted to ask if anyone else felt like that was necessary. Steve said he'd welcome some factual basis for some of our thoughts on why 30 is a good idea.
I'll work with them if you want.
Well, we can't three of us work on it, right? Why
Okay,
not?
take your pick.
Oh, shit.
We can if we post it.
yeah, that's true. If you post the minutes and
Okay,
agenda.
we'll work something out, then I'll put a draft together. Okay, great. Do we have a town planner's report?
Next meeting,
A birthday report.
yes, thank you all for attending my birthday public hearing.
Self-record.
It was advertised twice in the newspaper, and that's all, you know, we didn't get.
And you didn't
Yeah,
even-
nobody's.
Just saying.
Where's the food?
Next meeting, you have the special permit for the marquee sign at St. James Place. You're the hearing authority on that. I don't know, you can all easily make a site visit.
What's the date on that?
What did the
meeting?
select board do?
2 weeks from today.
They haven't heard it yet,
They
right?
granted,
2 weeks from today.
they granted it, John.
They did or they haven't heard it yet?
They granted it.
Granted the BCOD special.
Oh,
The 23rd, March
Okay.
23rd, Jackie.
And you back?
And also on that night, we'll talk again about the leftover, I think it was the tree. Right?
Yep.
Finally, I handed out tonight, and it's not on the agenda for discussion, but I handed out tonight a sheet that the town manager and I provided the select board and finance committee during the budget hearings the town manager, budget requests several new positions, and there's discussion about, the need for staff because the town is growing. And the committee's asked for some information about, well, what does that growth look like? What does that mean? So we put together these statistics. The top of that page regarding the actual developments that have been built and the developments that are permitted or planned, I think is most instructive. The housing unit data and the other data is from the census, and it's not as current or accurate, but the top of that page is. There's also some information about police and fire service calls to one of the larger developments, which is interesting to know. So I just want to leave it there. I wanted you to have this, and if you want to talk more about it, then another meeting we can.
Thank you.
This is great.
All right, thank you. Citizen speak. Do we have any citizens? We have no one left in the room. So are there any citizens on Zoom that want to speak this evening? Just go ahead and raise your hand if you want to speak.
I think you wish me a happy birthday, but the microphone's not working.
Should we sing for you? Okay, hearing no citizens, we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:05. Thank you, everyone.